across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, great to have your company. Another quiet news day, nothing much going on. Prime Minister not putting his tuppence worth in on what other people are saying, you know, policing other people's speech. Oh, don't use that word, don't say that thing. We're going to be talking, of course, about what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has had to say. The Man United boss has said that Britain has been colonised by immigrants. PM says he must apologise. Who does he think he is, telling people what they can and can't say? Meanwhile, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, claims closer ties with the EU would be the biggest prize for Britain. Biggest prize for Britain, love, would be for you to be sacked from your job, as we've just seen. Interesting that our newsreader just said we've had modest growth of 0.1% in the final quarter of last year. 0.1% is what we used to call flatlining. Plus, Labour is introducing that new law to allow 16-year-olds to vote. It is utterly insane. They are children. We don't allow them to do pretty much anything else. Therefore, I'm really sorry. I don't think that kids should vote. I don't care how clever your kid is. I don't care how knowledgeable your kid is. Your kid is a kid, and that's why they don't have the rights of a citizen to vote. It is gerrymandering, this is vote fixing, that's what it is. They think they're all going to vote for them. How we laughed when they'll end up voting Green and Reform, according to the polls, rather than for Labour. You've got to see the funny side, folks. Anyway, all of that coming up, plenty more besides, so much to talk about today. I'm delighted to say that joining me for all the chat today is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Very nice to see you. Well, look, let's start making sure we actually know exactly what was said, by whom, before we actually discuss it. I know, it's a mad idea, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
When did we ever start doing that?
You know me and my facts. Before I ask the question of you, so Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the boss of Manchester United, Mr. Self-Made Man, one of our, well, I think he's our richest person, isn't he? Runs a chemicals company in Ineos, although of course he's now a tax exile in Monaco. But you know, a well-known figure, doesn't do many interviews. Did an interview with Ed Conway on Sky News about various different things, and then he said this:
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause... It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
Now, there's a few things he did get wrong there, just simple factual errors, and we'll come to that. But that was greeted by, the usual outcry from the usual suspects, including one Sir Keir Starmer, who apparently hasn't got enough to do. He's just too busy hiring people who are best mates with paedophiles and annoying all of his female MPs and stuff, and being pretty useless at running the country. But he's got plenty of time to police what other people say in their publicly expressed personal opinions. He says those comments are offensive and wrong, that this country is a proud, tolerant and diverse country, and he's called on Jim Ratcliffe to apologise. I just want to know your reaction to all of that. Do you agree with what Sir Jim said? Did you not like the language but you agree with the sentiment, or you've got no problem with the language anyway? Do you think the Prime Minister shouldn't be, or should be, giving his tuppence worth on what other people say? No offence, Keir Starmer, but I don't think you can lick the food, the burnt dirt off the bottom of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's shoes from what he's achieved in his life. Who are you to be telling him what he can and can't say? Do you agree with the Prime Minister? Do you agree with Sir Jim Ratcliffe? Somewhere in between. I want to know what you think. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls, of course, are charged at the national rate altogether now. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Honestly, I say this in my sleep. Philip Ingram, did you agree with Sir Jim Ratcliffe? First of all, was he right to say what he said, and how he said it?
He was right and he was wrong.
Come on, we're not having fence sitters here.
No, I'm fence sitting, but I'm now going to come off the fence on each side and create problems for all sides. This is seen by the Prime Minister, and his reaction is purely because it's deflection from what's going on there.
Yeah.
And we're going to see the standard cut and paste of tweets coming out of Labour Central headquarters, and all the ministers are going to come out and say this is disgusting, blah, 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 because it's deflecting.
Although Ratcliffe was actually quite nice about the PM and about Nigel Farage. Well, he said he's a nice man.
Exactly. And it didn't help he got some of his facts wrong. But your British culture, I would argue, is a colonised culture. You like your G&Ts. The quinine comes from our time in Africa and our time in India. You like your Ruby Murrays. You like your chow mein and your chop suey, which aren't Chinese dishes. That's because we had an empire.
We eat some foreign food.
No, we had an empire, and therefore a lot of those cultures came into this country. 1066 were invaded by the Normans.
You can get a McDonald's in Japan as well.
Well, exactly. Anglo-Saxons. The Saxons in the 5th century were Germans that came in. Then we had the Roman culture that gave us roads, drains, and baths, which we all like. But we are, as a country, have developed our own identity over the years, and that identity is being overtaken by the illegal immigrants that are coming into this country and being absorbed, and that is changing the culture, and that's what I think Jim Ratcliffe was talking about.
No, I think he was very specifically talking about legal migration, actually. Let's be very clear. When he said the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020, now it's 70 million this year, that's 12 million people. That was factually wrong. He said it was actually 58 million in 2000, not 2020. He was out by 20 years. So basically, early on in the Blair years, before we had the mass immigration, and it's risen by 3 million since 2020. What I love about this is people go, oh, it's only risen by 3 million since 2020, not by 12 million. We are into the same territory as we are with the campaign for Brexit and the Vote Leave campaign with that £250 million sent to the EU every day on the side of a bus. And the Remainers go, no, we don't send that much. It's only 185 or whatever after the rebate. And they thought, oh, this is a horrible lie. Of course, it meant that people were constantly talking about how much money we sent to the EU. And British people were going, how much? 180 million and 250 million makes no difference to us. It's a heck of a lot of money, and we're sending it there rather than getting it here. When you say it's only 3 million people since 2020... OK, but 12 million people in total increase of the population, most of which has been as a result of migration, whether it's people arriving here or them having children. But again, nevertheless, as a result of immigration, people go, how many? Even 3 million since 2000. That is 1,643 more people arriving in this country every day, and that's the net figure. That's the net figure. Okay, this is the thing. My thing is, like, he also talked about 9 million working age benefit, 9 million people on benefits. It's only 9 million on working age. We've got loads more other people who are living, OK, people who paid their pensions, and younger people as well. But we have a massive issue. We have a massive issue in terms of the number of migrants who are on benefits. These are undoubtedly issues, and they're only becoming issues in the public and in our politics because certain people have been raising them. I'm saying, Nigel Farage, other prominent people have been talking about them. Otherwise, we've been told for years, net immigration on grand scale is a good thing. It is bringing us economic prosperity. Well, we just got the latest figures. We're flatlining. 1.3% for the entire year last year, and 0.1% for quarter 4 of 2025. We've had virtually stagnant growth for 20 years, while we've had a mass explosion in immigration. How's that working out for us? They're not a net benefit. When he talks about the word colonised, this I think is the big issue. Being colonised, colonisation is a group of people going to somewhere else, to another area, and basically working to sort of take control over the people,
culture over the culture of that place.
But that is what has happened. Now, whether people have planned to do it or not, when you bring in millions of people from other cultures, which a lot of them are, look, the largest number of people who've arrived in this country are actually been Indians, you've got Chinese, you've got Pakistani, you've got Nigerians. Indians actually by a far long way. But in terms of, I think, a lot of people feeling in terms of the changes in culture, I think people are actually more concerned about those from Muslim countries. Reason why? There's been a rather big separation in terms of groups of society. Now, the thing is, we have got, even like the most lefty people, the Prime Minister himself talked about an island of strangers earlier last year, apologised for it afterwards. We do have whole swathes of our cities where whole neighbourhoods are just one ethnic, religious, national heritage group. They don't mix with other people, they don't speak the English language, they don't speak to anyone outside their group, they go to the same schools, they go to the same places of worship, they socialise together, they work together. And we've got demands for blasphemy laws. Yep. We've got the influence of the pro-Gaza MPs.
Sharia law demands.
Infecting our foreign policy and our attitude towards Israel. I'm sorry. What he said is true.
Yeah. I live in Birmingham. I see that. And this is where you get...
Then why shouldn't he say it?
He should say it. But you get two sets of this. And here's... I'm not sitting the fence with this, but there's people that come into this country and will integrate into the culture that has been built up. That is a multicultural society, and they'll come and be British, because British culture is multicultural by de facto. But then you get people who come in and try and impose their cultures onto British culture and will not integrate and absorb. And that number is growing. And you're exactly right. You get these communities of primarily Muslims in different areas who will stick together. And then the government changes the two-child benefit rule, and that two-child benefit rule, it has been proven, is going to benefit more people from these
Pakistan and Bangladesh in particular.
These communities that are not integrating into society, that are not working, that are not net contributors to what's going on financially or culturally or anything else, and it's creating further diversity. And therefore it's something we should be worried about. Enoch Powell said it.
The biggest lie that is told about this country is that we are a nation of immigrants and that we are built on diversity. We are the exact opposite. Since 1066 and the Norman Conquest, we have had virtually no major influx of migrants until Blair from 1997-2000 onwards, when it has exploded, despite the express will of the people expressed at every general election that we wanted those numbers to come down. Labour and the Tories afterwards, and you know, I mean, Labour, it'll come down net under this Labour government because of stuff that Rishi Sunak enacted rather late in the Tory governments. But it is carried on going up and up and up exponentially. We are not a nation of immigrants. We are incredibly homogeneous, very culturally similar group of people. You know, the biggest difference between being Scots and Irish and Welsh and... I mean, come on. We are a very... The evidence is...
Let's talk whiskey.
And we're told diversity is our strength. No. Actually, there's no evidence that diversity in a nation, it promotes strength. It doesn't promote community cohesion. It doesn't promote trust. It doesn't make people happier. The happiest, most cohesive societies in the world are not diverse. Now, this is already, as these things always are, already turned into an issue of race. Already we've had, I mean, for some reason, Today programme on Radio 4, they decided to invite on the sort of the Muslim Manchester United Muslim fans group, or whatever they're called. What? Why is that? Why does that group even exist? How is the God you worship remotely relevant to the team you worship? I do not get that, and that is part of the problem. But it's nothing to do with race. There is no. Jim Ratcliffe didn't mention race. He's talking about culture, and he's talking about money. He's talking about a large number of people coming to this country, changing our culture, dominating our culture, not assimilating. But, I mean, I think we can read into that, but also not financially contributing. And what's the hit back? Well, he's a tax exile. He's moved to Monaco. If I could save £4 billion on my taxes, I'd move somewhere. I'd move somewhere warmer and nicer too.
Exactly. But
sod that.
You know, up until Blair, those that came into this country and integrated into the culture that they found. You know,
because they arrived in small numbers.
Because they arrived in relatively small numbers, and there was a lot of effort to you know, and people were almost forced into integration. They weren't allowed to have these separate areas purely for their culture. Since Blair came in and brought in his wider tolerance and everything else, we've started to see the separations in this country, and those separations are what are causing real problems across society, because you get divides. As soon as you get divides, then those divides, whether they be cultural, ethnic, religious or whatever, are just exacated.
Yeah,
by
but exactly. The Prime Minister talked about us being a proud, tolerant, diverse country. Well, I mean, actually, an awful lot of people on his side of the debate, they're not proud of our country. They think our country's done terrible things. Tolerant means putting up with. well, why should we put up with something we didn't vote for?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're right.
We didn't vote for it. Not only did we not vote for it, we expressly voted against it and were told the manifesto of the winning party at every election from 2010 onwards promised to bring down immigration. And then saying, and we're a diverse country. We're not. The vast majority of people in this country are long-standing, brackets, white, because we're a European people, therefore we're white. This is not controversial stuff, people. But it's just utterly bizarre. No one says that Japan should have, Japan's doing terribly because they don't have enough immigrants from Pakistan or from Nigeria, for goodness sake. No one says, oh, isn't it terrible that Nigeria doesn't have enough Indians and white people? This is only happening in sort of these sort of, oh, isn't it terrible that we're white and that we're European countries? But again, this always comes down to, whether or not people are willing to face up to the truth. That actually having a load of people coming from America or Australia or France or Germany, those people, we're quite happy to have those people. They don't actually disrupt our culture. They assimilate, that more than likely speak the language. And yet people coming from, and again, it's largely third world, still basically peasant-like country. Pakistan or Bangladesh, I'm sorry, and Nigeria, there's a huge amount of wealth in those countries, in a very few people, but the vast majority of people coming from those countries are not coming here to make a contribution. They are coming here and then they are ending up very soon living on benefits. They are not earning enough to be making a net contribution. We need to accept that, and anyone who's not accepting that is just not playing with the facts.
Those that come in that are wealthy from those different countries you mentioned tend to have got their wealth and their culture from British culture that was exported whenever we ran our empire.
Also, by the way, I really don't give two hoots how many Man United players are from abroad. I believe it's around 75% of them are from abroad. I'm intensely relaxed about people coming here and earning millions and millions of pounds a year.
As long as they pay taxes.
I'm paying tax on it. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think they're arriving and just saying, "Can we have Sharia law, please?" And forced marriages and FGM. Because we've imported all of that with our wonderfully proud, tolerant, and diverse society. I'm not proud of that. I'm not tolerant about it, and I don't think that diversity is good for us.
The bad thing about this is we're seeing our politicians trying to make a racist issue out of this.
They always make it about
when
race.
It's not
no
a
one
racist
mentioned
issue.
race.
It's all exactly. It's all about integration and dilution of the culture that we know.
And sheer numbers.
Yes, and the numbers that increase will dilute the culture that we've got. That culture doesn't matter whether you've got white skin, black skin, brown skin, yellow skin.
It matters
not. It matters not where your third generation parents came from, because you've integrated into society. You're working as a common group. We've now got big numbers who will not, who refuse to integrate, who fly their own flags from where they've come from, who will insist on their own laws being applied, and who oppress their own people.
And by the way, I've got the same issue with people from Britain who go over the Costa del Sol and demand to have bacon eggs everywhere they go and refuse to learn the language. I feel the same about that. That's it. That's Spain's problem. That's up to them. They can make rules about that. This is my country. This is your country. We get to decide. We have a vote and we get to decide what happens in our country. Yeah. And that's the thing. And we've decided, and we keep telling them what we want, and they keep doing the opposite of it, which is why we are in such a mess right now. I just want to know from you, what do you think? I mean, what does Sir Jim Ratcliffe say that was wrong? Don't like the word colonised, but I mean, why are we going to get hung up on that word? He got some of his stats wrong, but ostensibly, I think what he said in terms of the message, sentiment
was
I think was right. Meanwhile, PM absolutely loving this. He can appeal to the left.
Hey, squirrel!
Every time he does it, I do go, "Where's the squirrel?" Because he's under a lot of basically he's. It's like Andrew and Manderson never met a dodgy billionaire they didn't like. Yeah. It does appear that our Prime Minister never met a new Labour person who was big friends with a paedophile that he didn't like. Big issues with him. Labour women apparently are now furious about the fact that this guy Matthew Doyle was appointed to appear, even though it was known, the Prime Minister's admitted that he had a backed guy who was accused of, charged with, but not actually convicted of having paedophile pictures of a child at the age of 10, for God's sake. I mean, come on. And by the way, people in these scenarios, when they plead guilty to this stuff, they always plead it down. This is the deal. There will be way more. I don't believe for a nanosecond there won't way more horrific things on this person's computer. So I'm sorry. God knows what else there were. And we've now got a row over the vetting of the proposed new cabinet secretary, Antonia Romeo, her old boss at the Foreign Office. When it says when she was High Consul or whatever she was in New York, that apparently she was a bit of bully and basically some dodgy expenses and the like. I mean, this is just going to run and run. But of course, she's a woman. So he's got to appoint her.
But Keir turned around and said, is there anything I should be aware of? And she said no, and he's accepted that. He's such a good barrister when it comes to interrogating people and finding out everything that there is about them.
I'd love, if I'm ever accused of a crime, matter of time, right? I'd love him to be the prosecuting barrister.
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
Totally getting off that case.
He'd just believe everything that anyone says, and that's the trouble. The Mandelson affair has wounded him. Fatally, I would argue.
Yes, it is fatal, isn't it?
And then yesterday, he stands up in Parliament, and I'm going to big someone up I never thought I'd ever big up. Ed Davey skewered him completely. And you could see the way that got straight to Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer then was forced to come out with exactly the same excuse he'd used at Mandelson. I was told by him that there was nothing.
Absolutely.
When actually what the facts are proving is he knew beforehand. He's just been caught out, and he's just lied to Parliament.
He's so funny. He's really rubbish at testing whether people are telling the truth to him or not. But he's also a really bad liar himself, isn't he? And we all know he's toast. It's just a matter of time before he's gone, isn't it? Andrew, I think we all know he's toast as well, given the spate of different investigations into him.
Just prosecute him.
He's being probed by criminal prosecutors over the Epstein scandal. The update, I mean, there's been more and more stuff is coming out in America. We've got the tip of the iceberg of this stuff. The stuff we've seen is a fraction of it, and it's redacted. More and more and more is going to come out. We've also now got front page of the Sun, this £12 billion loan from the Queen and King Charles, well, Prince Charles as he was. What, the Queen couldn't have the late Queen could have just sold a picture? Didn't she have I've always thought that the monarch would have a spare 12 billion in their account, but this was a loan, not a gift, to pay off Virginia Giuffre. And presumably all the legal fees as well. That would have probably hit well over $1 million. But he hasn't paid the money back. But of course, he hasn't got anything to pay the money back with.
But, that's a mum lending her son who's in trouble an amount of money. Yes, 12 million is a huge amount of money, but it was from her personal money.
My dad helped me with my rent once when I was in my mid-20s.
But
I think it was 400
quid. There's lots of people out there.
I paid it back a month later.
And any mother would lend their child, when they're in trouble, whatever, to help get them out of trouble.
Would I lend my child, if I had a son and he was accused of having sex with a 17-year-old who'd been trafficked for him, basically given to him by a paedophile, would I bail him out? I don't know if I would.
Well, but this is
unless it was about protecting, as we talked about before on the show, the firm.
Correct.
It's not about protecting Andrew; it's protecting the firm.
And this is where every mother's got their different standards that they will set and do it, and there are a lot of factors that come in. Andrew. It's been known that he's a nasty piece of work ever since I've ever heard of him, for decades and decades and decades. And therefore, I'm not surprised with what's coming out in the Epstein files. The King has done exactly the right thing in removing all his royal titles and everything else, and with that will come any of the perceived protections that we've got. The only member of the royal family that is protected in law from anything is the King himself. And therefore, it's right and proper that the police investigate this, that, like, if any other potential criminal investigation, which this is, we treat it in that way.
Should have been investigated long ago based on the allegations.
Should have been, but how many other investigations should have been carried out a long time ago? Mandelson should never have been appointed if the investigations happened a long time ago.
Exactly.
He's another deflection by the government because he's clickbait and he stops the focus going to Keir Starmer.
Absolutely. Something else that I was talking about a lot on the show yesterday, and I have to say, if you follow me on social media, quite a lot of messages last night as well, about this horrific shooting in Canada. High school rampage, killed 8. Thank God, one of the girls that they thought had been killed actually did survive her injuries, very seriously in a hospital. So the Canadian police did a press conference last night, named the school shooter as an 18-year-old. Extraordinarily, though, again, they got themselves in that little muddle they keep on getting themselves into over who was it? Was it a man or woman? They said a female 18-year-old. After a question to correct it, no, it was a someone who was born a biological male and had transitioned to female. This is Jesse Van Rootseller, who killed his stepbrother and his mother before going to the school. They don't know what the motive is yet, and the fact he was clearly deeply troubled, had been involved in the police, had violently attacked people previously. Why the hell he had access to guns, I've got to be honest with you. But again, continue to refer to the killer as she and her. The reports, it took BBC and Sky and others quite a long time after this had been said. You knew there were meetings going, what do we do? What do we do? We've been calling this a female killer. Women don't go on mass shootings by and large, never have in Canada or the US, or in the UK, tiny number in the US. Well, I knew straight away yesterday morning it wasn't a woman, that it was a man. Basic research clarified that numerous people in a very small town had identified who this was and said it was a male. Even this morning, the BBC just saying a biological male who's transitioned to female. You can't transition to female. If you're a biological male, you're a man, and you're a man for your entire life. Right now, he is a man. He's in a morgue, and his body is the body of a man. And they're still referring to him, although I thought it was interesting, the BBC used they and them pronouns, which, given that he apparently identified as a she, I think it's a bit transphobic, but this is the madness we're in. And I've had all these people say to me, why does it matter? Why does it matter? Because if the police and the media and the authorities cannot be trusted to tell us basic, verifiable facts, like whether someone was a man or a woman, what else will they lie about? If you'd be happy for them to say, this man was black, when you can look at him and go, he's clearly white. If they said, no, he identified as black, he was black.
That would cause real outrage.
That would cause an outrage, because it wouldn't be true, right?
Correct.
Well, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
A man went on a rampage and he killed people.
Let's
say the facts.
It is quite clear. I wouldn't even call him a man. It's an 18-year-old boy with severe mental health issues that have been known about for a long period of time of his life. The police knew about him, his family knew about it. How he got access to weapons, we don't know. People are getting their knickers in a twist about this trans thing. No, it was a man that a male that carried out this.
If one of the victims was someone who was they would say a trans woman, but they don't want to say that phrase because it doesn't fit their politics, and then they accuse people like me of stirring up hatred. No. Facts aren't hateful.
But the Supreme Court has clarified the line for
but they're all going with the Canadian police. Well, that's not the law in this country.
Correct.
But it is the guidance from Ofcom and IPSO to the media, and we need to get that changed, because they are basically authorising, requiring people to lie to you.
We need some Ofcom complaints.
It's not... Yeah, seriously, complain constantly. Whenever they lie to you, you need to complain. 10:29 is the time. We're going to take a break and we're going to get to your calls. What do you make of what Jim Ratcliffe had to say, that Britain is being colonised by migrants, and the Prime Minister saying his comments are offensive and wrong and he should apologise? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. That is the number to call. This is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:32 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. So let's get some of your messages about Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Sean says he's 100% right, and Starmer makes a fool of himself demanding that people stop noticing. The only thing offensive is most of the absolute state of this country. Thomas says never apologise for the truth. James says we are being colonised, no doubt about it, and Starmer wants it that way. Immigration ensures he has voters coming into the country. Michael says where in some major UK cities, while white Brits are the minority, you can't really disagree with him. He speaks the truth. Labour, says Steve, will never win another election. Make Sir Jim Ratcliffe the Prime Minister, says Drake. He actually cares about the country. And Brian says it's not offensive, it's the truth. But we all know Starmer doesn't do the truth. Well, let's go to another caller now. It's a rather different view. Saeed is in London. Saeed, you think that the comments were wrong, don't you?
Yeah, I think the comments are wrong. I have a very
Saeed,
low
can you hear you, my love? Saeed?
Yeah, hello?
Hello, hello?
Yes. Hello?
Oh,
hello?
I got you. I just lost you for a second there. Apologies. I think it was my headphones. Saeed,
yeah, no.
well, you don't like what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said?
No, I don't. I have a very low opinion of tax-dodging billionaires. I think you said that he avoided tax by moving to Monaco. I think it's just how bankrupt and ridiculous as our system is. Nobody should be able to avoid tax by just moving to a different mansion that he owns. And
Wait. You're saying, yes. Wait a minute. So he's not allowed to criticise people coming to this country, but he's not allowed to move to another country.
No. I'm just saying he should
not
be able to avoid taxes.
But if he doesn't live here, why should he? Why should he pay taxes here?
Because our taxes should be based on the assets people own, and they should not be able to avoid it by suddenly spending a few more nights in Monaco mansions.
But our laws make it quite clear. If you don't live most of the year in this country, you don't pay taxes in this country.
Yes. And those laws are very, very one-sided and designed for extremely rich people who have accountants literally tallying how many days and hours people spend in the country.
I don't know what you do for a living, Saeed. I don't know what most foreigners does for a living. I reckon that Jim Ratcliffe, in his time, as a working-class lad who grew up in a council house, who's made all this money himself by being a brilliant businessman, I reckon he's paid more tax than all of our audience, you and me, put together in his lifetime. He's paid his dues.
No, he hasn't. He is worth 20 billion. He should not be able to avoid 4 billion of taxes by moving to Monaco. And I think we need to start taxing wealth, not income. And I have paid taxes, you have, but I think these super billionaires, they don't pay a fair share, and that's where the money should come from.
Do you mind me
leaving that aside?
Okay, go for it. Move on. Yeah.
And then, look, I mean, the reality is our white population is having children well below the replacement rate. And that is why we need immigrants to come in and do the jobs that locals are not trying to do. If we look at when we hanker for homogeneity, we can look at Japan, which has a massively aging population because they have always kept a lid on migration. And that is not a successful business model for anybody. I also agree that there is colonization of the United Kingdom, but that colonization is coming from the US, which has pervaded all sorts of our culture, our movies, our cinema, our language.
But wait a minute, but America is part of our culture. We gave America a lot of its culture. It's just kind of bouncing back. But hold on a sec, I disagree with you on this, on the demographics. The answer to our demographic problem is for making it easier for people in this country to have more children. If we build more homes. One of the reasons why people can't have kids is because they can't afford to get a family home. They can't afford another bedroom to have another child. And that's because we've got a massive influx of people. We didn't build more homes, but we had millions more people arrive. That's put the pressure on house prices. I mean, so bringing more people in doesn't solve that problem.
No, I agree. But I think we should make it easier for people to have more children. But then we need to also get rid of some of the racist policies. I think one of your colleagues was mentioning that this two-child benefit cap goes to the benefit of migrants. Who cares? We need children. We should be encouraging people.
No, we want children. As a general rule, statistically, there are various different studies. I'm not entirely sure that we want to be throwing more money at people who aren't working, and whether their children are going to be the net contributors to the future, I think is, should we say, questionable at best. But there's research saying different things on that. So I mean, look, the thing is, you're clearly, I mean, people will be able to tell, we can't see you, but from your voice, that you're clearly a migrant to this country yourself. Do you think this is? I mean, do you think these comments are you're disagreeing with the factual side of things? Do you agree with the Prime Minister that these are offensive and wrong comments?
Look, I think they're offensive and wrong, but I think the Prime Minister is not in a position to say that because he himself has made very offensive and wrong statements about Island of Strangers, etc.
What's offensive and wrong about that?
Because he's using the language of divisiveness, he's using the language of Enoch Powell, etc. And then on Jim Ratcliffe, I think he is deliberately misdiagnosing the problem we have. We are, if you look at our 20-year history, our growth rate has been anemic, I agree. But actually, if we did not have the immigrants coming in, we would have been in recession for most of those years.
If we didn't have the migrants, then maybe we would have had to force our young people to go to work and not be allowed to sit on benefits, and we'd have been training up our workforce to do the jobs ourselves. I just simply disagree with you on that. Again, I don't think these comments are offensive or wrong at all, because I think they're stating a fact. You know, when you say like they're dividing, what divides people is having, you know, their local school. This happened when I worked in the East End of London. A local school within about 5 years going from being everyone standing at the school gate talking to each other to a school where most of the mums didn't speak English. They only spoke Bengali, and the other mums couldn't even converse with them. That's what divides people.
No, I agree. And look, there have always been waves of migration to this country, whether
not
these
on
are
this
Jewish
scale.
migrants.
Not on this scale.
True. That is true.
This is unprecedented.
I agree. But there have been migrants, and there has been a ghettoification element, because when these newcomers come in, they're not really welcomed. They don't know how to access services. They cling to each other, and whether that's sort of Jewish migrants at the East End, etc. I think it's important. I'm all in favor of integration, and I think the government should spend money on making sure that parents have English language classes.
Why should my taxes pay for someone to learn the language? I think you shouldn't come here until you do speak the language.
Because we all benefit from that. So then
no, we don't. No, we don't.
No, hear me out.
We benefit from someone learning the language before they get to come here.
No, Julia. Look, if you have a Bangladeshi woman who has arrived here and she does not learn the language, does not know English, I think it is in a society's benefit that we give her the skills to learn English so that she can be a productive member of society, right?
My question is, why are we letting her in the first place?
Look, I don't know. Maybe she got married to somebody who lives here.
Well, so, then, yes. I mean...
So then you want to stop people getting married because they don't...
Well, we already do. No, we actually do. We have quite strict rules, actually, about that's been... Look, I could talk to you all day, but I'm literally about 10 minutes over time. I've got a guest waiting on the line. I'm going to have to leave this. But, Syed, we'll do this again. Call in again. I so appreciate your call. 10:40 is the time. Lots of you may want to have your say on what he's had to say as well. 0344 499 1000. Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, is up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. 10:41 is the time. Let's get straight to my next guest, waiting very patiently on the line, Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun. Good morning to you, Trevor.
Good morning, Julia.
As you go, quite a heated debate. We've had quite a lot of heated debates already, and it's only 40 minutes into the show about what Sir Jim Ratcliffe had to say. He's basically said, you know, you can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits, huge levels of immigrants coming in. The UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, isn't it? The Prime Minister says these are offensive and wrong, these comments. Are they?
No, of course they're not. They're a breath of fresh air. I mean, he's stating the obvious, and I think that a very large majority of this country's voters will agree with every word he said. We are seeing the evidence on a daily basis before our eyes in some of the northern and the London areas, south of England as well, cities where you've got basically ghettos occupied entirely by one particular migrant from a particular area, and they've got together, and this is where multiculturalism has been such a disaster, because it favours exactly that breakup of our society. This is not it's not you know, the DEI formula is not diversity. It is actually division, and they are dividing themselves against us.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, isn't it? But this is the thing that when the Prime Minister talks about, you know, how we, I mean, he mentioned we were an island of strangers, didn't he, last year? And then, of course, he backtracked on that. But when he says we're a proud, tolerant and diverse country, and lots of talk about how this is dividing us. But no, what's divided us is politicians inviting in millions and millions and millions of people to this country and not requiring that they assimilate and integrate, that they speak the language, that they adopt our norms and values and behaviours, and live as British people. And I'm sorry, they have not. Now, there are plenty of migrants who do that, and they are very welcome and who contribute. But inviting in huge numbers of people, let's be honest, from the third world, from countries with a completely alien culture from ours, has not been an economic or a cultural success.
No, and what we have to make sure people understand is that this is not a race issue. It is a cultural...
They wanted to turn it into that, though, didn't they?
Of course they do. We're all racist and fascist if we raise a single word of warning or alarm. But this is about culture and religion, and in particular, as far as religion is concerned, Islam. And we are seeing examples of this in so many areas, in crime, in attitudes, in the way that people are increasingly, especially women in the society of Islamic, wearing not just a headscarf, but the full veil, so that all you can see is the eyes. Now, I think that is a challenge, a deliberate challenge to the resident existing population.
It's a political ideology on our streets, yes.
Indeed, and not just to white people, to people like, I don't know which faith or religion Saeed follows, but to people from Indian origin, from Chinese origins, from any other area of our immigrant population. This is a direct challenge, an affront, an act of aggression, at least of assertiveness, which is bordering on aggression.
I find the burqa hugely offensive as a woman, hugely offensive, and actually feel quite physically sick whenever I see a woman wearing it, especially when she's walking with a man who's wearing like a t-shirt and shorts. And apparently, you know, and I just find it's just utterly bizarre. But this is the thing. Culture and economics are the two things that people are arguing about. When people live in a town or a city and their local high street is suddenly completely and utterly, let's use the word alien to them, where every shop front, I've got a high street. That's interesting. I live in an area, a lovely, nice, leafy street, but we're between an area that's very, very well. It's basically, I mean, every single shop front is now is written in Islamic script, in Arabic, and then there's a much posher high street further away where it's it's all leafy, and Keir Starmer, I'm sure walks down that street, but. These are completely different cultures, and a lot of the people who say this is outrageous, this is racist, this is terrible, they only live in and see some streets. They don't see the reality for an awful lot of people where their child's school, their local high street, their local GP surgery has changed beyond recognition. If I go to my local GP surgery, I'll stand there for half an hour waiting while the receptionist tries to make herself understood to 3 or 4 people in front of me who haven't brought translators with them. And that is now the norm in most cities.
Well, I agree with every word you've just said, Julia, and I think that the overwhelming majority, not just of your listeners and viewers here, who may be of a certain inclination anyway, right of centre at least, But I think for the overwhelming majority of people across the country, except those who have taken it upon themselves to say that this, what I regard, and as Jim Ratcliffe has suggested, this invasion of people who are not intending to learn the language or our culture or follow it or abide by it or in any way accept it as the way of their lives. So this is a divisive situation which is growing deeper and will get worse as time passes during the remaining years of this ghastly government.
Do you think this is remotely relevant that Jim Ratcliffe, and it's something that Saeed Al-Qawla made, is a tax exile now, or that he co-owns a football team which has 75% non-British players in? Are those two facts relevant to this?
Utterly irrelevant. And I think it made the point that Jim Ratcliffe started off with nothing. He lived in a council house. He had to risk his home with the agreement of his wife, mortgage his home in order to get into a business which he then built and developed into the biggest in the country. And he's employed hundreds of thousands of workers as a result and paid salaries to them. He is a benign influence in this country, not, as Saeed suggests, someone who's living like some sort of beggar on our benefits. He is paying his taxes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. And again, it's like, the foreign football players. You want to pay people millions of pounds and they pay millions of pounds in tax. I'm all for it. But that's the reality, isn't it? Because one of the key comments he was making was about the 9 million people on benefits. Now, that's working age people who are on benefits, who an awful lot of whom, frankly, are perfectly able-bodied and should be working and are being allowed not to. And that was one of the key points he was making as well. And that's kind of been lost in all of this.
No, and I think it's the point that you made, that this is the result of many years, actually, of government failure in policy, where we have imported ready-made workers from abroad.
Yep.
Many of them are highly skilled and qualified, in order to save having to pay for the training and qualification of them among our own young people here in this country. So it's a huge price that we've paid. It's too easy for employers to simply say, I'm not going to train anyone in medical skills, in scientific skills, in accountancy and all the rest of it. Bring in someone who's ready trained at the expense of the countries they come from, remember. So, yes, this is years of policy failure. And it's not just Labour. I'm as horrified.
No, absolutely. Of course, we've seen the latest policy failure. Latest figures quarter for the final 3 months of last year. We had growth of 0.1%. We're flatlining. Total for the whole of the year so far looks at 1.3%. We've been flatlining for years and years and years, despite, of course, the fact that we were going to massively see our economy grow because of mass immigration. The irony there. The Prime Minister is in a lot of trouble because he's, the economy is in a mess. Everything else is in a mess. He's not achieved anything. All these U-turns and all then, of course, the Mandelson affair and, of course, the Matthew Doyle issue as well, appointed a peer, even though the Prime Minister's now admitted he did know that this man had campaigned for someone who'd been accused of, but not actually convicted of at that time, of paedophile offences. How dangerous is the territory the Prime Minister is in right now, and in particular with an awful lot of women Labour MPs now speaking up and saying they're angry at this little sort of boys' club in Number 10?
Well, yes, I think this is a huge problem for not just Keir Starmer, who basically is now a hostage of the Labour left, but for the Labour Party generally, and even for people who are now speaking out, such as Harriet Harman, who, after all, remember, she was the chairman of the National Council of Civil Liberties, which supported, along with Patricia Hewitt and Baroness Chakrabarti, the paedophile information exchange, which they affiliated with. Was affiliated with the Civil Liberties.
And they argued basically that a child could consensually have sex with an adult.
Yes, and in fact proselytised the idea of it being a good thing.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, mind-blowing.
They have now since, or at least two of them, Patricia Hewitt and Chakrabarti, have apologised. So Harriet Harman resolutely refuses to apologise for that. Yep. But look, this also spreads back to the child grooming gangs. These are children too. They're not adults. These were young white girls, often as young as 14 and even younger than that, who are being brutalized and raped and trafficked by mainly Pakistani origin people living in the very communities we've been discussing, which are separate, utterly separate. They are indeed ghettos or colonies of immigrants. And that really epitomises everything that Jim Ratcliffe was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good to talk to you, Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun. Thank you very much indeed for that. Very quick response to all of that from Philip Ingram.
Well, he's talking complete sense. The deflection of the was about taxes and taxes. That's another deflection. This whole thing is a deflection operation.
Yeah, absolutely. That squirrel you keep talking about.
Yes.
Going to take a quick break. Going to get to more of your calls, and that would be bit tight on time, so the guest we were going to talk to about votes at 16, James Mathewson, we're going to talk to him in about 20 minutes about that. Should we be having votes at 16? The law's going to be brought in, introduced today, that's going to allow basically kids to have a say over who runs our country. I mean, basically we've got kids running the country, haven't we? But there we are. I'm opposed to it because it's frankly mad, but there we are. What's another mad policy between friends? That's up next. This is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is indeed Talk. 10:54 is the time. Let's take more of your calls on this Jim Ratcliffe comment, apparently, which is completely offensive and wrong, according to the Prime Minister. I just love the idea of the Prime Minister telling our most successful billionaire, self-made mad businessman, to apologise. Who the hell does he think he is, policing other people's speech? Oh, of course, that's exactly what Labour do, doesn't they? Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Daniel, who's in Epsom. Been very, very sweetly waiting on the line. Daniel, what do you want to say about what Ratcliffe had to say?
Hey, Julia. Hey, Philip. What I want to say is that what we're currently seeing in Britain at the moment is a fight back, because let me take you back in time. In 1951, if you look at the census, the country was 98.9% white, spoke English as a first language, and were broadly Christian. So we were virtually homogenous in less than one man's lifetime. If I take you back to 1997, I was just coming of age in London. I can tell you there were about a quarter less people walking around than there are today. We had black and Asian families in Britain, but it was much more homogenous. London and Britain in general was much safer. There was much less crime. There was much more togetherness. This is in 1997.
I hate to tell you, actually, I think a lot of crime has actually gone down since then, weirdly.
It feels a lot more dangerous.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
It feels a lot more disparate.
Yeah.
It feels like there are hundreds of different groups. Everyone in the boat is rowing in a different direction, when not so long ago, everyone was rowing in the same direction. And the thing is, as well, what you have to bear in mind is across the last 6 or 7 general elections, the British public have given successive governments We've told them that we wanted illegal immigration stopped completely and legal immigration to be very selective and low in number. And both of them have ignored us. And now they're all holding their polls going, oh, they're going to vote for reform. What did you expect?
Yeah, exactly. No, but they didn't just ignore us. They expressly told us in their manifestos that every single winning party, that they would do the exact opposite of what they then went on to do. They lied to us absolutely blatantly. And they wonder why we're angry.
Yeah, and the British public in the last 6 or 7 general elections, on the doorstep, one of the top topics has been immigration, because we can see the decline and degradation around us. We can see that things are getting worse. Yeah. And we've imported lots and lots of problems that we didn't used to have. We've got violent gangs in our towns and cities. Mm-hmm. We've imported FGM, honour killing, sham marriage, suicide bombing, the full vow, grooming gangs. You've got cousin me, you've got all these things that didn't exist a couple of generations ago. And we don't want it. We've never wanted it, okay? And we're well within our rights to be angry now and say we've given you explicit instructions over the last 30 years to stop this, and you've not done it. And now we have an opportunity to vote for reform, and we are going to give you one almighty kick right up the jacksie, and you deserve it.
And that's what a lot of people will be cheering you on, Daniel. Thank you very much indeed for that. Andrew is in Liverpool, wants to have his say. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Julia. Good morning.
Morning.
Jim Ratcliffe is absolutely right when he says we're being colonised. We're being colonised by invasion. And Keir won't like that word because he doesn't like the truth anyway, does he?
Yep.
And that's what I
Why would you say those words are the right words? Because lots of people are saying they kind of agree with Ratcliffe, but they don't like the language.
Well, this is the wokeness that we're a part of in the country, I'm afraid. It's just nonsense. They don't like the truth. It's nothing to do with the language. They just don't like the truth.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and a second point, since they've been coming over on the boats, is it 10 years? I don't know how long it is. However, they should never, ever, ever have been able to roam the streets free. It's just insanity.
No, they were coming on the lorries beforehand, and they made the lorry route harder. They started coming on the boats in the late 2010s.
Parachute in, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, eventually they will. They will. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. Interesting point there, Philip, from Andrew, which is, they say it's the language. They don't like the language and everything. Actually, they just don't like the truth, because actually, it's the kernel. It's the kernel of truth that they've got an issue with, because it kind of undermines everything that is at the centre of the sort of leftist woke ideology.
But again, if you listen to the argument that's come out from Keir Starmer, from everyone else, and this is why I keep saying it's deflection, they're attacking Sir Jim Radcliffe's tax status. They're attacking this. They're attacking that. They're not attacking the substance of what he's saying. No,
it's always substance. It's annoying that he got some of his stats wrong. Always have your stats right. But I'm guessing he wasn't planning to talk about this, and he said it in quite a casual way. And in a way, you're thinking, oh, good, but someone of his stature saying it, because he's also been true. I've heard him on the people on the BBC, this guy going, of course, he is a Brexiteer. Oh, well, in that case, we can write him off. How dare someone who understands how businesses work vote differently from all of them at The Guardian and The Beeb? But there we are. Love to hear more of your comments. Lots of calls still coming. Whether you agree or disagree with Ratcliffe, agree or disagree with what the Prime Minister had to say criticising Ratcliffe, get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about votes at 16 as well. Another bit of madness. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And it's always a rip-roaring show today. If you've missed anything from the show, you can always go to my YouTube page, hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. It's easy to find. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. There you go, nice and simple. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about the Man United boss, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, saying that Britain has been colonised by immigrants. A lot of people are unhappy about his language, including the Prime Minister. He says those comments are offensive and wrong and has called on him to apologise. I don't know who Chris Tom thinks he is, telling other people what they can and can't say, especially someone who, by the way, no longer lives in Britain. He's now paying tax in Monaco, saving himself an absolute fortune. And everyone, can we all stop pretending we wouldn't do exactly the same in his position? Also going to be talking about the Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, who has said yesterday that workplaces will be exempt from guidance on single-sex bases. How can workplaces be exempt from the law? The law is clear. The Supreme Court made it clear last April. So we'll talk about that. Plus, of course, the ridiculous situation in Canada, that horrific mass shooting at a school where the police there and the media there and the media here have got themselves and their knickers in a twist over calling the man who shot those children and adults what he actually is, a man, insisting on saying he was a biological male who identified and had transitioned to be female. No such thing. It was a man who committed that crime. We're also going to talk about the ongoing criminal probe into disgraced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Oh yeah, and Labour introducing that law today to allow 16-year-olds to vote. The hilarity when they all vote Green and Reform instead of Labour. You've got to see the funny side, even though this is an absurd new law to bring in. Anyway, all of that coming up. I particularly want to hear from you what you make of the Man United boss Jim Ratcliffe saying Britain has been colonised by immigrants and the Prime Minister's criticisms. What's your reaction? Whose side are you on? Pretty sure I know whose side you're on. Do you have any issue with the language, or are people just making up that sort of pretense because, as one of our callers has just said, they can't handle the truth about what Jim Ratcliffe had to say? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and text, of course, costs the standard network charge. Philip Ingram, delighted today, still joining me in the studio, former senior military intelligence officer. I forgot your MBE then. Philip Ingram, MBE. Good morning to you.
Good morning again.
Very much. Were you vetted for your MBE? Talk about vetting in the last couple of weeks.
You're vetted through the whole of your career at different levels, and yeah, vetting is very interesting. I had a vetting unit as part of my battalion.
I'd love to know what they know about you. Do you think I'd pass vetting? Do you think I pass vetting to be an ambassador?
Well, it depends at what level, depends ambassador where, but yeah, and depends
not
what,
the US is, I think, the answer to that.
Depends what political top cover you've got. You know, there are certain barristers that would be able to drill into some things that you might want to keep hidden. There's other barristers.
Oh, there's plenty I want to keep hidden.
Yeah, I'm okay. Go. All right, you're okay. I'll accept you.
Okay, good to know. Thought I'd ask. Obviously, lots of the conversation today is about Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the Man United boss, and of course, boss of Ineos, self-made man. Grew up in a council house, went to grammar school, but still had grammar schools, and went to uni, and then basically set up his business, as Trevor Kavanagh was pointing out, to mortgage his own home, to basically set up a business. Immensely successful, richest man, the biggest business, massive employer. I think we should listen to this man when he talks about things that he feels strongly about, but he's got in quite a lot of trouble, and he's been called to apologise and told that his words were offensive and wrong by the Prime Minister of this land, trying to deflect attention from some of his own problems, I think, because of an interview that he gave to Sky News with Ed Conway, a man I've got loads of time, he does the most fantastic economic analysis, and in a quite a wide-ranging interview, Jim Ratcliffe said this.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
Now, I mean, he said it twice. He definitely wanted to use that word colonised. He was actually wrong about the population figures. The population wasn't 58 million in 2020. It's 70 million now. It was 58 million in 2000. The population, I think, was 67 million in 2020. But what I love about this, Philip Ingram, is that people go, no, those figures are wrong. And you should always use correct figures. Again, you know me, big on the facts. But when they say, well, look, it's only 3 million people who've come since 2020. That is, done my maths, 1,643 people arriving a day. That's net. That's net, by the way. There's lots more people who've come, and then lots of Brits have left, and people come and go, and the students are like. But overall, we've added an extra 1,600 people a day since 2020.
That's a big queue.
That's a heck of a lot of people. And again, people have noticed that. It's crowded on the trains and on the buses. It's crowded on the roads. House prices have gone up because there are more people competing for, let's face it, pretty much the same number of houses. Yeah. You can't get a hospital appointment. And no, they're not all working in the NHS. They're largely the patients. You go to any NHS hospital, I will guarantee you that half the people sitting in that A&E waiting room, and it certainly are when I go, don't speak English as a first language, or frankly, often at all. He's talking about some basic facts. He did also talk about 9 million people on benefits. That's 9 million working age people on benefits, many more who are not net contributors to the country. But again, if you're a pedster, people understand that. You're a child, people understand that. But he's talking about the economics of this. But I think he's also, when he says the word colonised, he's also talking about the cultural difference. Now, the Prime Minister's response to this has been that that these comments are offensive and wrong, and that he should apologise. And the Prime Minister was insisting that we are a proud, tolerant and diverse country. Why do we have to be tolerant? Why does he think we're proud when most people feel that actually he's not proud of our country and wants to change it? And we didn't ask for the diversity. I mean, I'm with this man 100%. I don't have a problem with his language. I wish he'd got his stats right. But at the end of the day, we should be listening to this person. He's saying what millions of people are thinking.
Yeah, the Prime Minister is zooming in on minutiae, and he's trying to attack anything that is around the outside of what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said, rather than the substance of it, because the Prime Minister knows that the substance of it is right. And actually, if you then zoom out even further, the worrying thing is, and we've had a number of people criticising Enoch Powell's 1968 Rivers of Blood speech, and Rivers of Blood came from a classic quote, not him saying this is going to happen. But a lot of what he has suggested is going to happen is the way society has been polarised today.
But the mass scale of immigration would lead to divisiveness and division.
And that is exactly what is happening in our society. And we should be, our politicians, instead of criticising him for his tax affairs, or criticising him for getting statistics wrong, or criticising him for doing something else, need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture and suddenly go, we do have a brewing problem here. And if we don't deal with it
But numerous
soon,
Prime Minister, David Cameron identified things. Baroness Louise Casey, who's been trusted from everybody, from every Tory, every Labour, grooming gang victims and other, as someone who speaks a lot of sense, talking about how we've got completely unintegrated communities. We're told we're multicultural. No, I don't want to be multicultural. I want one culture in this country. I want it to be British culture, because I consider our culture to be superior to other cultures. I do. That's why I choose to stay in this country. I don't want to live in a country where it's okay to cut the genitals of a baby. I don't want to live in a country, I'm opposed to male circumcision as well, by the way. I don't live in a country where girls are married off to their cousins. I don't want to live in a country where men can beat their wives and it's still legal. I don't want to live in a country where if you leave your faith, you can be executed. I don't live in a country where you can't criticise religion of any kind. I don't want to live in those countries. I'm sorry, I don't. And so I choose not to. And if that's how you feel, don't live here, is my view. But this is the thing. He's saying stuff that a lot of people know to be true, and our politicians have been ignoring for a very long time. Every now and then they come out and say it, like David Cameron did. Like Rishi Sunak touched on it a bit. Even Keir Starmer a year ago was talking about we are an island of strangers. Oh, then he backtracked. I haven't actually read the speech. But we are an island of strangers. We have brought in not just millions of people who are not net contributors to this country, one person doing low-skilled, low-wage labour with largely a man, with a wife who doesn't work or speak the language, and 4 kids, is not going to be a net contributor to this country. They are not, I'm sorry. Moving into an area where everyone else is from the same national heritage, not speaking the language, not mixing, not integrating. I'm sorry. This is a disaster economically, it's a disaster culturally, it's a disaster socially, and it has divided our country. So people pointing out facts doesn't divide the country. The actual facts are what has divided the country.
our politicians don't want to do anything about it because it means taking a longer-term view. It means doing things that are going to upset constituents in some of their more marginal
Say it like it is. We've got a load of Labour MPs who rely on a large contingent, particularly a Muslim vote in their country, and they don't want to upset those people. Let's just speak plainly.
Some of those are ministers. So this is where
West Streeting. Hello, if you're watching.
Yeah, well, Lisa Nandy. I've just mind dumped her name. MP for Yardley, MP for Women, who doesn't do anything to criticise the rape gangs and everything else. Jess Phillips. That's it. And they will not take a longer term view to deal with the growing issue. And this is where our politicians are building up a longer term problem for this country. And this is where Enoch Powell's predictions could come true if they don't do something about it. But it's not a vote winner. It's not something that they need to concentrate on today. They can push it off.
I don't even think that it's too difficult for them to. I think to face up to this undermines the very foundations of sort of leftist wokist thinking, which is that British culture and history and identity is bad. White people are awful and racist and have a terrible history. Brown people from wherever are victims. The immigration, diversity are, by their very nature, a good thing. These are, and the immigration definitely to this country has been an economic miracle for us, despite the fact that our economic statistics quite clearly show that it has not been. And the argument that, well, it would have been worse without these people is abject nonsense. We're in a situation where they cannot accept this as true, what he said, because you take that one brick out of that edifice, the whole thing comes down.
But if you go hard left, you go Marxist-Leninist, and then you can't have different cultures. They'll be oppressed. You can't have anything that doesn't follow what the state says. You don't allow this sort of diversity. None of that's there. So they keep saying this is leftist culture. It's not leftist culture when you're pushing towards Marxism.
No, the woke so-called.
It's the woke culture. Yes, completely. But it's blancmange, where people can't make their mind up. They haven't got a clue who they are.
I want to play another clip. This involves the United Nations. We've got so many other things I want to talk about, but we're going to get to those with guests over the next couple of hours. But I do want to play you a clip of something that happened at the United Nations this week. I mean, it's not the top of the news agenda, but I think it's where you and I talk a lot about international politics. There's lots going on in terms of Ukraine at the moment. We'll come to that a bit later as well. We've got these talks. We've got the Munich the Defence Security Conference starting tomorrow. We've got defence ministers meeting in Brussels today. And there's a lot of talk about these American talks with the Iranians about nuclear situation. Now, we've had the Iranians. I mean, because there wasn't that much footage, because they stopped the internet, basically, perhaps it should have been on more front pages, more time. But we think possibly up to 30, 40, 50,000 people, largely young people, fighting for democracy. All they were doing, peaceful demonstrations, were murdered in cold blood, shot down, later machine gunned by their own government for simply demanding some basic human rights that we take for granted in this country. We really have got to stop taking those for granted. This week, this is so bizarre. The United Nations decided that they would have 2 new vice chairs for the Commission for Social Development. Just have a little watch and a listen to what happened.
May I take it that the Commission wishes to elect by acclamation Mr. Abbas Tajik of the Islamic Republic of Iran and Mr. Shahryar Hajiev of Azerbaijan as vice chairs of the 65th session of the Commission for Social Development. I hear no objection. It is so decided.
No one even objected to this, OK? So the United Nations has just elected, without objection, Iranian representatives, so Iran, as the vice chair of the UN Commission for Social Development. What does that UN Commission do? It prioritises advancing, I kid you not, democracy, gender equality and fostering tolerance and non-violence. You could not make this up. When you listen to the UN criticising Israel and giving nonsense pronunciation, things about colonisation, all of that, the nonsense that they do, decolonisation, all that stuff, and war crimes. This is the same organisation that thinks that a government that has just murdered in cold blood tens of thousands of their own young people peacefully demonstrating on the streets, that they should be put on the UN Commission for Social Development. This is a waste of time organisation. We need to leave it, we need to defund it, and we need to start again.
I've worked with the UN in different operational theatres. I've been to the United Nations in New York. It is one of the most corrupt organisations that there is going, and these sorts of committees and all the rest are completely irrelevant. Everyone ignores them.
No, they are, but but we're paying for it all, and it's all bought. It's all bought and paid for by the Chinese, by the Russians, by the Arab states, by a lot of very, very, very questionable governments. But I just wanted you to see that madness. Anyway, 11:17 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about votes at 16. But why on earth should children who aren't even allowed to buy a fag or a pint going to be getting the right to decide who our Prime Minister is? I don't know. Maybe they'll get it. They can't get it as wrong as their adults have done. I'm completely opposed to this. Got to talk to someone who thinks it's a great idea. Up next, this is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 11:20. Let's go to my next guest now. He's James Mathewson. He's a former spokesman for the Labour Party, no longer a Labour Party member, and a commentator as well. Good morning to you, James.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, you don't often support a lot of the things that any government is doing, let alone the Labour government, but I think you are rather in support of this new law that's been laid down today, which will allow 16-year-olds to vote for the very first time. Why do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been something that I've cared about for some time. I saw the results in Scotland. Now I live up in Edinburgh now, but I saw the results in Scotland during the referendum, obviously on the UK membership, when they engaged it and they extended it, and I saw how kind of transformative it was for a lot of communities and for a lot of young people especially to feel engaged. You know, there's a lot of statistics that point that if people get engaged younger, that they start and maintain that engagement with democracy, which is obviously a good thing for all of us. And I just think that young people, there's been so many monumental changes, right, in recent years, so many monumental decisions made, whether it be through referenda, whether it be through just elected representation. But those young people don't have a say in that. And then immediately a lot of them, you know, either go into the world of work or take up university places or apprenticeships, whatever it may be. And they haven't had a say, and they haven't been able
neither of the 15-year-olds, should they have a say?
Well, no, because there has to be a cut-off.
There has to be a cut-off. And we've decided the cut-off. We decided that the cut-off at the age of which you obtain these citizenship rights of voting is when you're an adult. So why 16?
Well, that's it. I
mean it's 16. There's no argument why it shouldn't be 15 or 12.
Because
or
there's
8.
obviously a cut-off point. I mean, that's not...
Yeah, but the cut-off point should be when you're an adult, shouldn't it? As opposed to sometime through your teenage years.
But if you look at the things that you can already do when you're 16, you can look at the decisions you can make for yourself, if you look at a lot of the things that you can do and choose to do.
What can you do when you're 16?
It isn't aligned.
What can you do when you're 16, other than have sex legally?
Well, yeah, it's the age of consent, which means that we know that that person has made up their mind and able to make decisions. And able
what
to,
else?
Think.
What else?
it's not me saying what's already
No,
in place.
I'm just saying, this is the interesting thing, that in recent years, we have racing. So, for instance, you used to be able to get married at the age of 16 with the permission of your parents. Now you can't. It's 18. You used to be able to buy cigarettes at 16. You can't. You have to wait until you're 60. You can't buy a vape when you're 16. You can't buy alcohol legally when you're 16. You can't. You can join the army, but you absolutely don't go anywhere near the front line when you're 16. They're even going to stop them having social media until the age of 16. That seems to be the plan. And then the next day you'd be allowed to vote, but you wouldn't be allowed to, see any of the campaigning before then. I mean, we've got to a point where we are saying that 16-year-olds who are children are not allowed to do more and more things before the age of 18, and now we're suddenly saying, but they are responsible people. They should have a say in how they govern the country. If you don't have a say over whether or not you can have a glass of wine or a pint, why on earth should you have a say in governing the country?
Exactly. I think, by the way, your point's valid about things not being aligned. I think things should be much more
votes at 18.
No, 16 in my mind, because I'm sorry,
you want 16. You want it to be easier to buy cigarettes, so that 14-year-olds are buying cigarettes at 16.
As you say, if you're able to have a child, if you're able to, make these decisions for yourself that we acknowledge already, then why are we waiting until?
But hold on a minute. No one is saying, you know what, you can get pregnant at 11 or 12. I don't think we think that's a good idea either.
No, it's not about the biology, Julia. It's about the acknowledgement by the state of what is a point of maturity, and that's the question.
Okay, but you're mature. You're saying that we should bring everything into alignment, but it should be at 16 rather than at 18.
Yeah, and I'm not going to stand out here and pretend to be a health expert and say that, there's specific reasons why 16-year-olds should be able to drink or anything like that. I'm not going to advocate for that. But the smoking age for me was 16 before.
Well, I mean, I was definitely drinking at 14, and I wouldn't advocate that either. But this is the thing. It seems to me the Labour Party and the SNP remarkably confused about when they think that someone is of age and when they think someone's mature enough. I had a very mature 16, now 19, but was 16-year-old. At 12, she knew more about politics than most adults I meet. Still didn't think she should have the right to vote, and neither did she. I think it's nonsense. You get the right to vote when you're an adult. We agree that you're an adult at the age of 18. Why should it be brought down any lower, other than, and you know perfectly well, if Labour thought that, and if the SNP had thought that 16 and 17-year-olds were going to be voting for reform or voting against, in the case of Scotland, voting against Scottish independence, they wouldn't have pushed for it. This is gerrymandering. This is an attempt to fix the vote.
Undoubtedly their reason, because it's beneficial to them, or they think it's beneficial.
They think it is.
But that's the thing. A lot of Gen Zers now are quite right-wing. I'm regularly coming across many conservative Gen Zers, so it's not the case that I'm doing this from a position of thinking, well, it's beneficial because everyone's a lefty. I just think that it makes sense because of how our electoral terms work. You're locked in for 4 years. I mean, look at the state of affairs now, right? We elect a government with a big majority that now is rudderless and completely aimless, and nobody wants it in. So
But hold on a minute. But I'm an adult. I'm 57. I still don't get a say on that government until the next election. But I get a say in local elections, and our children will get a say in the local elections as and when they reach the age of 18. I understand that you're at least trying to be consistent and saying we should have these kids doing these things at 16. Everything at 16. I'm not sure that's the way the world is going. But I just find it absolutely absurd that you... I don't know if you've met many 16-year-olds. I don't think most 16-year-olds are very well equipped to make judgments on voting. And one of my biggest concerns would be how much they're indoctrinated at school by teachers. And they haven't perhaps had a chance to...
Julia, come on.
Massive issue. That's why they all think the world's about to die because of climate change, and why they're all thinking they're trans.
Yeah, right, okay. But unfortunately, you're in the minority on that, Julia, and you know that. Because the majority of us in the real world acknowledge that trans people are very real.
No one's saying people aren't real.
Well, no, but...
I'm not saying they're figments of our imagination.
Schools aren't telling people to be trans.
They're affirming it.
Children, right?
They're affirming it. They're lying to children.
It's a real thing. It's a
It's
real
not
thing.
it's not a real thing. Someone
You just
thinking.
said that you acknowledge it's real.
No,
and then
I
say
said
it's
the
not a
people are real.
thing.
I said the people are. No, I'm not. If someone stands before me and says I'm a trans woman or man, I don't think, oh, you're a figment of my imagination. They're as real as you or me, but they're not actually trans. No one is born in the wrong body, and no one
Julia,
can
that's your
transition.
opinion.
No, it's not an opinion.
It's your opinion, and it's a minority opinion.
Who murdered all those people at that school, in that Canada school shooting yesterday?
What are you on about, Julia?
Who
For
murdered?
God's
Was it a
sake.
man or a woman?
No, I'm sorry.
Was it a man or a woman?
No. Yeah, we're talking about education.
Who was
UK
it?
School system. No, stop it, Julia.
Stop
because
what?
You're doing there is you're equating regular trans people with murderers, right? And you know what you're doing by doing that.
No.
You're stirring the pot.
You're saying you believe that men can become women and women can become men. I don't think they can.
You are doing something dangerous in doing that, Julia, and that's really you are advocating for linking those two things, which are totally unrelated. I'm sorry.
No, there's a major story in the news that involves someone who is trans, apparently. I didn't decide their identity. They did. But then the media misreports it and claims that it's a woman who's committed a crime when it wasn't a woman, it was a man.
I don't have anything to say to you about that, Julia, because you're in denial of the reality.
Because it's a bit uncomfortable, isn't it? It's a bit uncomfortable because it's a fact.
It's not that it's uncomfortable, it's because it annoys me, Julia, and it upsets me, frankly, because what you're doing... What you're doing is linking people who are having a very hard time right now in society.
It's a massive... I think the people who are being shot by that man who identified as trans were having a pretty hard time too.
Do you seriously think it's clever to link trans people?
I didn't link trans people. No, a trans person, somebody who claimed to be trans, murdered a load of people in Canada.
We were having a discussion
and you
about
lot talk about trans all the time. If one of the victims was trans, you'd be all over this. The fact that it was a man who claimed he was trans, no one talk about it. No one talk about it.
No, listen,
that's what's going on.
The thing is right now that it's absolutely despicable to link those two things, because we were just having a discussion.
I didn't link those two things.
Julia, you did. We were having a discussion about schools.
The person who did the killing linked those two things.
We were having a discussion about schools in the UK.
We're having a discussion about indoctrination in schools, which is why I don't want 16-year-olds to vote.
Let me finish. Can I finish?
Go for it.
Yeah. What I'm saying is we were having a discussion about UK schools affirming students about their transness, about gender identity, about anything, affirming them in their bodies, in their identities, just giving them the tools to understand themselves. And you bring up a mass murderer in Canada because they were trans. That is despicable. Come on.
It's just facts.
You brought it up. There was no connection.
It's just facts.
There
was absolutely a connection. Absolutely. It's the affirmation it's the affirmation of this mental health issue.
You think the affirmation of trans people leads to mass murders?
Wait a minute. Aren't we constantly told that if we don't affirm, then it will lead to mass suicide? I believe that's exactly what parents of trans kids are being told. They are being told that all the time. And that, by the way, factually, is not true.
Yes, it is true.
Again,
Julia.
not true.
As somebody who has
the data is very, very clear. You need to read the report. You need to report. Let me ask you something else, completely different. Jim Ratcliffe. He's getting a bit of a kicking from, quite a lot of people, and getting a lot of praise from a lot of people for saying that we are being colonised by immigrants. The Prime Minister says his comments are offensive and wrong, and he should apologise. I wonder whose side you're on. Tell me what you think.
Imagine, can you guess? He's a bigot. He's just a bigot. He's letting the cat out of the bag, innit? You know? Just colonised by immigrants. What does that even mean?
Well, the words have clear meanings.
They don't have any meaning. How can
words don't have any meaning?
How can we be colonised? There is no central effort to take over the UK.
I don't think colonisation requires the central effort. Why do you say he's a bigot?
Because he's obviously indoctrinated by this idea that there's some great takeover taking place, right? The great replacement theory. There's some central effort to try and get people here of different cultures, which, by the way, always just happen to be brown people, to get them here to replace.
That's why he's a bigot.
People. Yeah, it's racist. Yeah.
So he's racist as well. Did he mention race at any point?
What he said is racist. No, because he's talking about the replacement, he's talking about colonization. The language is very evident. No, the thing is with racists, Julia, and you should know this because you've had plenty of them on the show, but the thing is, you should know that they don't like being called racists, and they don't like acknowledging...
I think people who aren't racist don't like being called racist.
No. Nobody likes being called racist.
Do you think I'm racist?
Especially racist.
Do you think I'm racist?
I think you've said racist things in the past, but I don't know, Julia. I don't know what's inside you. I don't know what's inside your head. That's what we don't know about anyone. It's like the same as Donald Trump. We don't know what's inside his head. We have to work off his actions and his words, you know?
What have I said that's racist?
Come on, Julia, we're not going to have this discussion live on air. It's ridiculous. I haven't got everything you've ever said.
No, I wouldn't expect you, but you have a view you formed of me. I know 100% that I have never thought or said anything that is racist.
Because I don't think you would have said it if you thought it was racist, would you? You know, but I think it comes from sometimes...
You would think it was racist.
Ignorance. It comes from ignorance.
So my ignorance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just like your ignorance around trans people and what you've just said about them.
My knowledge of biological fact.
No, your kind of opinion about trans people.
My opinion on facts.
I think what we should do for you is sit you down with one of the many trans people that I know.
I've met plenty of trans people. I've interviewed many trans people.
Well, it just fascinates me that you can engage with people like that and understand them and meet them and speak to them, and yet
still hold to biological fact. I'm still intrigued by why you think I'm a racist. Presumably you think I'm a bigot as well. If I...
This is mad.
No, it's not mad. Because you think that Jim Ratcliffe has said something. You don't like what he said.
Jim Ratcliffe said something racist.
And you think, and therefore he said something racist. You don't know whether he is a racist. It's hard or not. What he said was, you think he is a bigot. He said something racist. Even though no one mentioned anything about anyone's race.
Oh, clever that though, isn't it, Julia? That's why they don't. That's why they use words like colonising the UK. You know, what does that mean? What if we go back to colonising in colonial times? Race is intrinsically linked to it. Of course it is.
No, it's not. No, you're just thinking of white European colonisation. There's been colonisation by every single different culture, race and nationality.
Colonised.
You're just thinking of a very white Eurocentric view. Colonisation, a group of people who settle in an area and then work to basically establish control over the people already in that area. What's that got to do with race?
Yeah, where's that happening in the UK?
Well, I think when people are coming in this country and then demanding that we have that we basically allow Sharia law, or we allow, for instance, we have people changing our foreign policy.
I'm sure there's extreme examples, but I'm yet to meet anyone who's done that or called for that.
I think you'll find many community leaders have been doing that.
And if we're talking about asylum seekers,
people talking about blasphemy, it's not talking about asylum seekers.
Jim Ratcliffe doesn't seem to be bothered about the influence of people like Elon Musk, a South African in British politics who's trying to throw money at British political causes to influence our culture and society.
So who are you talking about?
He doesn't seem bothered about that. That's colonisation.
Who are you talking about?
Elon Musk. Jim Ratcliffe doesn't seem bothered about that.
I don't think he's moved to our country, has he?
No, he's joining rallies. He's kind of influencing culture. He owns one of the biggest platforms for social media in the world, which he's influenced, constantly talking about Britain on it. Never stops talking about Britain. Yeah. So he's trying to influence things here, trying to change things here. Jim Ratcliffe's not bothered about that. So
we don't know. Maybe he is. James, we've covered a lot of ground. So I'm going to leave you as a racist bigot that I am. James Mathewson, former Labour Party spokesman and commentator, not a member of the Labour Party. I have to stress that. He always wants me to stress that. Philip Ingram, I'll let you come in.
James's logic is exceptionally dangerous. You're talking about bringing the smoking back to 16, access to alcohol back to 16. He emphasised the fact that these were
They're smoking and drinking at 16.
Well, yes, but that these were school students. But the dangerous thing is you then open the floodgates to everything, and that floodgates would include access to pornography and participation pornography. You know, this is very, very, very dangerous ground. We cannot start pretending that our children are adults. And
the kids.
And access to child pornography is something that the Labour government has been hit with twice so far, and this is bringing this vote down to 16. If you bring everything else down to it, the logic gets to that game. Yeah. That's very dangerous, and I am really angry about it.
Thank you for bringing it back to vote to 16. I'm sure we'll talk about that another time. If you want to have your say on that entire conversation, do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. 11:36 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about why trans coming up again. Why the official guidance on single-sex spaces like toilets and the like will not apply in workplaces. This, according to the Equalities Minister. But how does the law not apply in the workplace? We'll talk about that up next with Amy Gallagher. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's certainly a lively show today, isn't it? 11:38 is the time. It's actually quite, you should actually have a guest actually calling me that. I usually wait till social media to be called a racist, but there we are. Do feel free to have your say. You little racist bigots, you all. I mean, it's just laughable, isn't it? It's just laughable. 0344 499 1000. That's when we do laugh at it. You know, they've made these words meaningless. When everyone's a racist, bigoted, fascist, then no one is.
Jim's always a fun.
It's always fun. Anyway, let's turn our attention. Philippa Grimm's still here, as you can hear. Your thoughts on all the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000. Very welcome. But let's get to my next guest now and talk about trans issues, because we've had that Supreme Court ruling back in April. We thought we made it really, really clear what the law was and what the law had always been in terms of single-sex spaces, whether it's prisons or toilets or changing rooms or all whatever. But now it, seems to be remarkably confused. Let's try and make sense with Amy Gallagher. She's a former NHS nurse at the Tavistock, that clinic that was basically leading kids down a horrible, horrible route. And she's a commentator now at the New Culture Forum. A very, very good morning to you, Amy.
Hi, Julia.
Where do we even start with this? I saw a note on this yesterday, and I was like, I don't even understand this story. This is the Equalities Minister, also the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. And basically, she revealed yesterday that the Equality Watchdog, this is the Equality and Human Rights Commission's, their as yet unpublished code of practice that they sent to her, I think, last September, is only intended for organisations providing services to customers, and it won't apply in the workplace. I'm very confused because we had a Supreme Court ruling in April that affects everyone at all times, in all places in our country, but apparently not according to the Equalities Minister. What's going on?
Well, and just to add to that, the Supreme Court ruling didn't change anything. It only clarified what was written in the Equality Act. So even before the Supreme Court ruling, women should have been given their single-sex spaces. Yeah. So the idea that post the Supreme Court ruling that still isn't happening is amazing to me. This whole idea of guidance, I always saw it as being used as an excuse not to enforce the law.
Yes.
The law is more important than guidance. You can always have all the guidance you want, and it can be all very helpful or unhelpful or whatever, but you have to follow the law. And
shouldn't the guidance just be making the law a bit more simple? Although actually I thought the Supreme Court ruling was 8 pages, was remarkably straightforward. Well, you didn't have to be a lawyer to understand it.
Well,
men are men, women are women. Sex is defined in the Equality Act is your biology, what you were born, not a piece of paper you've got or what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, this is the thing. How much guidance do you need around the fact that there are men and women, and if you say a space is for a woman, it is for a woman? You know, you can write that guidance on a post-it note, quite frankly. Yeah. It's not necessary. And what's happened is a lot of employers like the NHS have been using the fact that we're waiting for this guidance to be published as an excuse not to enforce the law. But obviously, as we've seen from Bridget Phillipson, she's saying, well, it isn't going to clarify workplace guidance anyway. So even when this is published, the NHS can still say, well, we're not sure what we're doing. is an absolute mess. We are 10 months on, nearly a year on from the Supreme Court ruling. We've had several cases, the Darlington nurses, Sandy Peggy, high-profile legal cases, and this is still going to be an issue for women working in the NHS or other workplaces.
And crucially, again, with those cases, those nurses, we are talking about nurses who are required to come to work not in their uniform, to change into the uniform, get down to bra and knickers and put their uniform on, and they're being basically forced to do that in front of any man who says he's called Jane and wants to stand and watch them, and that's what's been going on. And these women are absolute heroes of mine for standing up to this and saying, no, we won't put up with this. So what we're basically saying is that in an NHS hospital, for instance, if I, as a patient or as a visitor to a hospital, want to use a single-sex toilet, I've got the right to that. But the nurse or the doctor or the radiographer working, or the person working in the canteen or the cleaner, they don't have a right to that. I'm sorry, that's a nonsense. She's clearly wrong, and this is clearly going to face another legal challenge, and we're going to go through all this again.
It is a nonsense because nurses are protected by the Equality Act, which we now know when the word woman is used or sex is used, it means sex. And they're also protected by the health and safety at work regulations, which clearly state that single-sex spaces like toilets should be provided in workplaces. So the idea that you would ignore all of those laws because you're waiting for guidance is the complete wrong way round. It's the law that comes first, and the law is very clear. What it is that there are lots of NHS organisations up and down the country that just do not want to enforce this for fear of backlash within their hospitals, because transgender ideology has been pushed so hard in the NHS for the last 5-10 years that they are scared of the trans activists and that people will be upset by it.
Well, you say they're scared of the trans activists. The trans activists are the people in charge. That most of the people involved at high levels in these organisations didn't get there unless they paid lip service to it. They either believe it or they'll kowtow to it. HR, totally captured, absolutely, and I mean all their rainbow lanyards and the like. We know this. I mean, this is part of the problem. That you can change the law, you can clarify all these things. You can have reports into the Tavistock Clinic and have it really clear about puberty blockers and the like. But at the end of the day, you've got schools, the NHS, universities, the government, the civil service are utterly captured by this Stonewall-led trans activist agenda, which is basically taking away women's rights and dignity in favour of men who claim they're women. That's what's happening.
And what's even more amazing is that the Labour government are allowing this. The Labour government brought in the Equality Act. You will hear them talk nothing else about equality. Yet they are not they're not making sure that the NHS enforce the Equality Act. And they will also talk at length about misogyny and women's rights. But they will not protect NHS women, working class women. They will not allow them to be protected in the NHS. So they don't care about equality, actually, and they don't care about women. So it's complete hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. Actually, the Labour backbench, because actually a lot of the fight back against trans ideology came from women on the left who took a hell of a lot of a criticism and lost a lot of their friends and colleagues and allies for speaking out. They're the ones who took the brunt of it and had come over to the dark side of people who believe in freedom of speech and biological reality. Sorry, you're now on the same side as me. But it is fascinating to watch these women on the left at the Labour Party battling over this issue, like the grooming gangs inquiry, over the Mandelson being appointed as the US ambassador despite his friendship with Epstein, which was known at the time. He was a paedophile, serial women's abuser, and a boys' club that apparently didn't really think that was much of an issue because he was good at his job. I mean, they are really finding themselves between a rock and a hard place, and frankly, they're going to have to choose a side.
Yeah, exactly. And they can't be seen to be, talking about they need to bring in laws around or guidance around misogyny in schools, and they need to tackle toxic masculinity. I mean, all of that just rings absolutely hollow when, as you say, massive issues like Epstein, like the grooming gangs, and protecting working class women in their jobs at work, go silent on. So
yeah, exactly, because those middle-class women, funnily enough, they don't have to wear uniforms, do they? They don't, apart from their rainbow lanyard, of course, and their Palestinian badge. Let me ask you about events overseas, though. This absolutely horrific school shooting in Canada in a tiny little small town in Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. Yesterday evening, the Canadian police finally named the killer. He was identified by local people some 12 hours earlier as Jesse Van Rootselaar, an 18-year-old. They described the killer, as had been described all day yesterday, as a female. Then, under questioning, they finally admitted this was a person who had been born a biological male and had transitioned to female at some point over the last 6 years, from the age of 12 to the age of 18. Continued to use the pronouns she and her. BBC, Sky, and everyone, you could just feel the stress of the meetings they were having. Of what do we do? What do we do? We've said this was a female the whole day, and then agreed to basically say it was biological male who transitioned to female. They've not used the phrase trans woman once, which I think is interesting, because if it'd been a victim who'd been trans, they would absolutely use that phrase. They've tied themselves up in knots, knickers in a twist. In no way is the pronouns of the killer remotely as important, even a scintilla of importance, as the horrific mass murder they've carried out. But it does matter whether the police and the media, both in Canada and in Britain, acknowledge the reality of who committed this crime, isn't it? And tell us why.
It really does matter. I mean, I think the media coverage of this has been absolutely outrageous. Most of the headlines just say transgender. Now, that can mean anything.
Yep.
You don't know whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's someone that's gone through a transition, or they just say that they're trans. So it's a completely pointless word. And then when you read the articles, it says transgender female. So you sort of think, are they a female or are they trans? What are they?
Yep.
It's incredibly important that the headline should say a man has shot a certain number of people, because it is a man. And this is very important, because if you look at all the school shootings in America, historically, they are often, almost always, committed by men. This is a case.
And in Canada and America, Canada and Britain, there's never been a mass shooting of any kind by a woman.
No, exactly. So it fits within a pattern. And if we are to take violence towards women and girls, or violence just generally, seriously, we need to look at that pattern. So it's unbelievably infuriating that in 2026 we are still battling for, basic words to be used in relation to a mass murder.
Well, if the police can't give us basic facts like that, what else are they not giving us? Amy Gallagher, always good to talk to you. Voice of Reason at the New Culture Forum. Thank you very much indeed. 11:48 is the time. Take a quick break. We're going to talk about the latest battles going on for the royal family. We'll talk to the former head of Royal Protection, Di Davies. This is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening, the noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Unfortunately, actually, we've just lost Di Davies, the former head of Royal Protection. Can't get the quality of the line up, which is very frustrating. But we are going to talk about the royals, talk more about Prince Andrew. Philip Ingram's still with me. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. Must just get up to date on all the different people coming out, putting their tuppence worth in onto Jim Ratcliffe. We've had Rachel Reeves in the last few moments say she's horrified. Horrified. Oh. I don't remember her saying she was horrified about like Mandelson's appointment.
Oh, of course.
A mate of a paedophile is appointed to the most senior roles in government, and I don't remember her saying using the word horrified, but she's horrified that a top British businessman has said that we're being colonised by immigrants. That's what she's horrified about.
Or Lord Doyle being appointed.
Lord Doyle, yeah. The Green Party has said they're sickened by his comments. I mean, this is off. Andy Burnham, bearing in mind, of course, that Jim Ratcliffe is not just the boss of Ineos, he's also the co-owner of Manchester United Football Club. But the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has said these comments go against everything for which Manchester has traditionally stood, a place where people of all races, faiths and none have pulled together over centuries to build our city and our institutions, including Man United FC. Calling for curbs on levels of immigration is one thing. Portraying those who come here as a hostile invading force is quite another. It is inaccurate, insulting, inflammatory and should be withdrawn. Oh, it's all going off.
Hostile invading forces. We've got more individuals that have come across in little boats invading across our beaches than we have in the whole of the British military.
But that is a conversation about illegal migration, and I don't think that was what Jim Ratcliffe was talking about. I think he was talking about legal migration and government authorised, both Labour, then the Tories, and now Labour again, authorised mass, let's face it, pretty much uncontrolled immigration to our country from people who have no intention of contributing, being net contributors. Sorry, look, you know, my aunt was in a care home. I've met loads of care workers. They're wonderful, lovely people, but they're not economically net contributors to the country. I'm sorry. People working as cleaners in hospitals also are not economic contributors. They're doing very useful work. We should have plenty of Brits doing that work. We've got plenty of unemployed people who should be doing that work. We shouldn't have to import people in to do it. That's not the point. They're not actually net contributors. But an awful lot of people who don't speak the language, you're bringing in 3 or 4 dependents, your wife, your kids. You're not going to be contributing to this country. And if you're not speaking the language, you are not integrating, you're living in an entire ghetto, you are effectively setting up a country within a country.
See, I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe was including illegal immigration in that as well.
Maybe,
and they're coming across, and most of them are then just being given citizenship. And these are fighting age young men that are coming in who have got a view of...
They're not being given citizenship, yeah. They'll be given the right, effectively the right to stay, which is slightly different. They'll get the vote. Eventually they'll get the vote as well.
But they're changing the culture because they're coming in big numbers into small villages and elsewhere, small towns, and they're changing the culture in those towns. Yeah, that is, in effect, colonisation.
It's fascinating. When people say they're horrified and sickened, you like go, oh, there's something else going on here. Well, no, let's return to the issue of what I did want to talk about in this segment, which is the latest on the Epstein files. We've got a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister over Mandelson. We've got an ongoing police investigation there over possibly leaked documents. We've got an investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor when he was UK trade envoy, whether it was appeared to be the case from the Epstein files had leaked documents. But there's also this ongoing issue about his relations or not with women who'd been trafficked by his big mate, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it's emerged on the front page of the paper today that we knew there'd been this payoff to Virginia Giuffre. We didn't know the exact number, but we had an idea. These things get out. She sadly is now, his sex accuser, is now dead, has taken her own life. But £12 million was loaned in total to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, we're told. The late Queen Elizabeth said to have given £7 million for the 2022 settlement, another £3 million coming from Prince Philip's estate a year after his death, and £1.5 million paid by the then Prince Charles, now King Charles, with other royals also extraordinarily chipping in to stop the sex abuse case. Andrew, we are told by our source, has not paid back a penny. He planned to flog his Swiss ski chalet to repay, but he made next to nothing on the sale. But basically, he got a heavy mortgage debt apparently on that. He bought a whole load of money. There's going to be big questions now about the King and his decision to help lend money to his brother to basically pay off someone accusing him of something, of being basically a party to a crime. She was 17, she was legal, it wasn't like she was a child, legally in British law, but there's going to be question marks about King Charles's decision to do that.
Well, if there are question marks, there should be more question marks about Keir Starmer, because the King can use the same defence. I asked my brother, and he gave me this, and he didn't tell me the complete truth. And we've got an intern. No
one gives £1.5 million quid.
We've got a different. Well,
we know what it was for. We know what the money was for.
We've got an internal.
Going to pay off this woman who's accusing me of a crime.
But again, this is deflecting from the bigger issue. I think here, we've got an internal family issue where there's a family debt has been accrued, whether it be £10,000, £100,000, 10 million quid. You're just talking an extra naught and numbers in there. To poor people out there like all of us, the numbers are eye-watering. But the bigger issue here is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor leaking confidential financial information to Jeffrey Epstein so that he can make money out of it, and therefore the link in that and the potential criminality there is with her, and then the criminality of what Epstein was doing with underage girls and other girls.
But I'm sorry,
this
isn't a private family matter, okay? Because, for instance, Ronaldo wanting to stay married to Lord Mandelson when he was mates with Epstein, that's between them. He is not a public figure. The King, the head of state of this country, at the time the man who we knew would be the head of state of this country, along with the then head of state, giving money to a man who'd been accused of a crime to basically prevent him from having to go and testify and give evidence. When they say their concern is with, and we've had statements from William and Kate, statements from the King and Queen saying their concerns are with the victims of Epstein. Well, one of those victims, is anyone seriously doubting that Virginia Giuffre was telling the truth? I don't think anyone is. I don't think that you pay. I think we're looking at 10 million and 2 million in legal fees there. I don't think you pay someone that much money when you genuinely have not met them. That photograph you claim was not true. We know from the Epstein files was definitely true, and we knew it all along anyway.
Here's Maxwell said it's true.
They knew what they were paying the money for, and it was about protecting the firm. They did not want Andrew, after that disastrous Newsnight interview, to go and testify in the United States. They knew that God knows what was going to come out, and they knew that because information had been going up from security people, from his royal detail, going all the way up to the top of the palace about what he'd been up to, what he'd been doing, and with who and where, and they knew it all. This is possibly a huge cover-up. There are people talking about how this could bring down the British monarchy. This is a public family, not a private family. Money was used to basically pay off an accuser. That does not say you're looking after the victims to me.
No. Public money was not used. Public money was not used, and we have to be very correct in this. And you are very careful about what is correct and what isn't correct. This was private money.
Doesn't matter.
The royal family. I think the King has realised just how much his brother has screwed him over. And is therefore punishing him in a way that only traitors have been punished with beforehand.
I've not met anybody who's been close to anything that's going on in the royals who doesn't think that they would have had very good information about what was actually going on. I'm sorry, the Royal Protection Officers would have seen and heard everything. I think this one. I don't think this one is going away, and I'm sadly not for the King included. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Coming up in just a couple of moments, like I say, going to have Lord Glassman, Labour PM, founder of Blue Labour, in the studio. Find out what he thinks about what's been going on, particularly Jim Ratcliffe's comments about colonisation by immigrants of this country. Does he agree with him, or does he agree with the Prime Minister saying they're offensive and wrong? Well, we'll find out up next. Do stay tuned. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past midday. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Not hearing much anywhere else at the moment, that's for darn sure. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is absolutely fabulous to have your company. Lots more to talk about. If you want to give us a call, lots of calls already on the board. We're going to do our best to get as many as we can. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. In particular, you're calling in about what Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the Man United boss and Ineos boss, has had to say about immigrants basically colonising our country. The Prime Minister has said that his comments are offensive and wrong. Rachel Reeves has said she's horrified. The Greens have said they're sickened. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, has said he should withdraw those remarks. Jim Ratcliffe, in the last few moments, has released a statement following his interview with Sky News, saying that I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe. I think that's quite an interesting choice of words. Anyway, we'll be talking about that throughout the next hour and plenty more besides. Joining me in the studio, I'm delighted to say, it's still Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer, but we've shuffled him over to fit in our next guest. Delighted to say Lord Glassman, Maurice Glassman, has joined us. He's a Labour peer and founder of Blue Labour. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Lovely to see you. Look, lots to talk about, even before the Jim Ratcliffe comments came out. Let's play a little clip for those people who've been living under a rock for the last 14 hours or so, what the Man United boss, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, had to say in an interview on Sky News yesterday.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause... It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. No, it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
Now, Lord Glassman, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he got his figures wrong. It was 58 million in year 2000, the population, not in 2020. Back in 2000, that was the figure. But we've gone up by 3 million, not 12 million in the last few years, although that is more than 1,600 more people a day net coming to this country. So I think a lot of people might say only 3 million is a bit of a problem. Now, he said it's important to raise... He said, I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe. Interesting that it hasn't offended anyone else. It is important to raise the issues of controlled and well-managed immigration that supports economic growth. Do you agree with him? Or do you agree with the Prime Minister who says that his words were offensive and wrong and he should apologise?
Well, you know, this concept of colonised means that we've been invaded, that we are ruled by foreigners. I mean, that's a bit nuts. I mean, that's a strange word for him to use, but...
Why is it nuts?
Because...
People coming to this country and working to sort of establish control. I mean, what about people asking for blasphemy laws?
Yeah, well, we've got to...
What about people directing our foreign policy over Gaza and Israel?
Well,
controlling our policies?
They haven't controlled the policy. The point being...
They have controlled our policy on Israel.
No, I mean, we've been reasonably straightforward in that. I mean, that came from within the Foreign Office. My point is that this language and this understanding is completely understandable because we haven't stopped the boats. I mean, we haven't controlled...
Well, the boats is illegal migration. He may well be including illegal migration, but he's actually, when he talks about this figures about the number of people coming, he means legal migration. He means the people who have come since Tony Blair was in office under the Tories after they stood on every manifesto and promised and won on every manifesto which promised to cut immigration. Tony Blair never asked the British public whether we wanted to have mass uncontrolled immigration, just gave it to us anyway and said, don't dare there, it'll be good for us. The latest economic figures show ain't been good for us at all, has it?
No, I completely agree with that. I'm just picking...
Does that make you a bigot? I was called a bigot earlier.
I really hope not, but I've been called a lot worse over this. It's also a way in which the local population is not trained, is not participating in the economy. So it's also a way of keeping wages low, having I call it the Deliveroo economy. That's the whole model.
Well, that's it. And usually, actually, it's been the business people who've been saying, keep on bringing these people in. We don't have to train difficult, stroppy 16-year-olds in this country. We've got 25-year-olds turning up from third world countries who are happy to work and will work on minimum wage.
Exactly. So this is also a problem with our political economy. Obviously, what capitalism requires is the lowest cost, and to be able to exploit. So they're also ununionised.
Capitalism doesn't require exploitation or the lowest. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, well, what capitalism requires is the highest profit at the greatest speed. That's its wish. And if you've got a compliant workforce, that's a great asset to your profit. I mean, Julia, you know this.
Yeah, but I'm not a commie, so I don't. I'm sorry, I don't accept.
I'm not a commie either, but there's a problem with our political economy.
I don't think people who have a job are exploited.
No, what I'm saying is our economic model is based on mass migration and cheap labour, and that, Julia, has to be called capitalism. That doesn't mean that I reject the market and all this. What it means is that we have to have far more dignity of labour, far more stress on vocation. I'm in favour of closing half the universities and turning them into vocational colleges. We need skilled labour desperately. And so what we have depended on for 40 years, maybe 50, is mass cheap labour coming from abroad.
But when he talks about huge levels of immigrants coming in, he says, I mean, the UK is being colonised, it's costing too much money. He's also talking about the fact he says 9 million people on benefits. Those are working age people, many perfectly able-bodied, able-minded. We've got a bit of anxiety on a Monday morning who've just been told you don't have to bother working, and we've just written those off. That's got exponentially worse since lockdown, but I mean it's continued to get even worse now. There's no expectation or effort whatsoever by this current government to actually tackle that issue. So the economy ain't going to grow unless we're going to have more immigrants, but we're actually going to see net migration come down due to actions taken by Rishi Sunak when he was Prime Minister.
And Shabana Mahmood, I mean, I think she's doing a really good job.
What way?
Gonna kick back. Well, she's really trying to tighten up on the visas. She's really trying to tighten up on...
Or is she doing it?
She's putting forward the proposals for indefinite leave to remain.
But Labour backbenchers won't agree to that, will they? They're already objecting to it.
Well, maybe...
This is the idea that the 3 million people who came during the Boris wave, after promising we take back control of our borders and Brexit, those people basically, over the next few years, are going to be eligible for indefinite leave to stay. And at that point, of course, they're also eligible for more benefits.
Yeah, so there's got to be... I mean, my view is there's got to be very serious reform of...
Your Labour colleagues don't agree.
Well, let's have the argument about it. I mean, this is...
But you know what the argument will be? It'll be we're either caring, nice people, or we're bigots and racists.
Well,
that's what the debate is.
I think generally reality is impinging on the government in this sense. Also, we've got to renew our armed forces. I mean, this is hugely important. I mean, they say we've got 70,000, but that's not operational. I mean, we've got to support Ukraine. There's what's happening in Iran, where I think we've got an absolute obligation to support the people of Iran, restore the Shah. This is a fundamental matter of our national interests, and our military is depleted. And we need to have, above all, Julia, an industrial strategy. So welfare reform, it's absolutely inconceivable that 45% of 18 to 30-year-olds are disabled. This is just not true, everybody. It cannot be true.
I don't think it's quite that high, but we're getting there.
I mean, this is not true. The point is we have to become a, industrious, productive nation
but
again.
You know, and I know, that that's not going to happen under any government that thinks that net zero by 2050 is a desirable, achievable or affordable thing to be aiming for, and that is in law under the Tories, still supported by Labour. Ed Miliband is pushing on through with it. So is Keir Starmer, as currently, last time I looked, still Prime Minister of this country. So you know that's not going to happen.
Well, when it comes to energy, that's huge. I mean, cheap, affordable energy is an absolutely precondition of a good society.
Well, we don't have that.
But we absolutely have to have that mix. I mean, we've got to put into nuclear, we've got to develop that. But it's also the case that even the UN are saying that oil and gas, the demand for oil and gas is going to go up. over the next 20 years.
I don't need the UN to tell me that. We would have known that. Everyone who's paid attention would have known that for decades.
About, when I say even the UN, I mean they've been champions of this stuff. So there's got to be a fundamental re-evaluation of the energy policy, and there's got to be a systematic honouring of the people of this country so they could be trained into productive
labour. Here's the thing. The things I find confusing about you, Lord Glassman.
What do you find confusing, Julia? It's only our first date. You're finding me confusing. I don't think it's going well.
Hasn't even bought me dinner yet.
No.
Is that, you're so sensible on issues like net zero. You're so sensible on issues like welfare. You're very sensible on issues like the mass immigration and all of these things. But you are completely at odds with the mainstream of certainly the parliamentary Labour Party and Labour Party members, if not necessarily Labour Party voters, on these key issues.
Well, what I'm finding in my life, I'm used to being quite alone, but I'm not alone anymore. I mean, the Blue Labour group in the Commons is really growing. There's a genuine... You've got to remember with the MPs, they may have come from various charitable NGO, but they have to go back to their constituents every week, and they're going through an experience when they go back, and they go every weekend, and they're hearing it. So I've got to be faithful to Ernest Bevin, to Clement Attlee, to the people who inspired me to go into politics, that Labour has to be in the interests of working people and express their values. And I don't think I'm...
But actually working people now turning to reform.
Well, that's completely understandable, and that's the battle ahead.
When the Prime Minister couches, he often does, he couches this battle at the next election, even like local elections and Scottish and Welsh elections coming up, as this sort of this battle of our generation against, these dark forces of division and, the far right, and some of the words that have been used about Nigel Farage by prominent Labour figures, fascist, bigot, racist, far right, like when he talks about this sort of being a sort of a, the battle between good and evil. I mean, we're virtually fighting on the beaches in northern France at this point, according to some of this rhetoric. Do you think that rhetoric is and that attitude towards reform and Farage and indeed the voters for that party and for that man, do you think that's appropriate? Do you think that's accurate?
No, I mean, Nigel Farage has got to be called out as a saloon bar Thatcherite and a Putin appeaser. We've got to be very serious about
When's he a Putin appeaser?
He has really, really havered, and he's quite sympathetic if you look at the comments he's made about Putin and
He said he admired him as a politician. I mean, I admire him. The man runs rings around everybody. But I think he's a disgusting, horrible, murderous autocrat. And if I had the option, I'd shoot him right now in the head and wouldn't think twice about it. And I'd be doing the good thing in the world. No, but I mean, that's why... But you can admire his political skills, which is what Nigel Farage did.
I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about being very reluctant to pursue the strategy of building up our armed forces and actually confronting Russia. I think that when Ukraine is a huge asset to us in our industrialisation. It's got skilled labour, it's got natural resources, and it's got effective army. And I want to see that relationship strengthen. Now, when I go on every week with Nigel Farage, he's very reluctant to really engage with that, I'm just telling you, and you can push him on it. So I think the battle with reform is a really serious political battle, and Labour has to be the party of industrial strategy, secure borders, sovereignty.
But it isn't.
Well, let's see how it goes, Julia.
Let's talk about other issues that's going on, because this is a very, very useful story, this Jim Ratcliffe story, isn't it, for the Prime Minister? Oh, we can all talk about this now. Oh, isn't it disgusting? I'll be horrified. Funny, I didn't hear a lot of those words being mentioned. We were talking about Peter Mandelson being appointed as our most senior ambassador in Washington, when he was best pals, in his own words, with a man who was already then a convicted paedophile. What do you make of that whole row? How damaging has it been for the Prime Minister, and do you think he survives it?
Yeah, I think whenever I meet a journalist, all they ever ask me about is leadership. This is a much deeper political issue. So for me, and for where I come from, I was never, ever a fan of New Labour, right? So the market is great, immigration is great.
Intensely relaxed about very wealthy people.
Intensely relaxed, all of that. And it combined that with a hyper-liberalism, so really not making judgments. And this is where we went to with the madness about men being allowed into women's toilets. The transsexuality comes out of that. And it's no surprise to me that it ends up with paedophilia and corruption of the highest level.
Do you think that those sort of liberal views, in inverted commas, you think that's where it leads?
Yeah, well, if you don't hold anything sacred, You know,
if morals are all relative.
Yeah, well, and sometimes relatives. You know, you run into a huge amount of trouble. So, I've taken the blows for being extremely, extremely normal, common sense on, you know, love, honour, fidelity. These are hugely important things.
They're very old-fashioned values, but they're actually values that most people
They're not old-fashioned at all.
They live by them.
They are the future. As I say, we've got to look at this situation, Julia, in the world now, where in Iran people are willing to die to restore the monarchy. The monarchy is the future.
Yeah, but the monarchy and then elections.
That's the whole point. When I say monarchy, I mean not having tyrants, not having and not being ruled by lawyers. You know, they wanted to restore the parliament. They wanted a monarchy just like ours. When I talk to Iranians, they talk to me about 1660 and the restoration.
Okay.
How did you do that? So the point being, those values, Julia, these are how we live.
You were saying that New Labour. I mean, you've used a phrase already, but this is where New Labour leads us. You said the other day in an interview.
Yeah.
Was it to perversion and paedophiles?
Well, that's where we ended up with this story. And
do you think that's a uniquely New Labour thing? I think we've seen plenty of paedophiles and perversion in other parties.
Yeah, but this is a really serious case, and it was because they withdrew, which is where we began, and you kicked back at me. The most important thing in the world is not money. You know, there are things that are sacred that are not money. Our parliament, our democracy, our liberty.
Well, this is why this bunch was so surprised when people voted for Brexit, because they thought the economic arguments was the thing that would clinch it.
And I gave my life for Brexit. I mean, I went through all that because we need to be a sovereign nation. Our ancient constitution is beautiful. We need to restore the integrity of Parliament. We need to get the Supreme Court back to the law lords and renew our constitution and politics, which has served us so well for all these centuries.
You didn't want to talk about the leadership, but I did ask you a very straight question. Do you think that the Prime Minister survives this?
Yes, I do.
You do?
I really do.
To survive past the... Well, he survived. There's a by-election coming up. We've then got the local, and we've got the Scottish and the Welsh elections. If, as the polls are suggesting, Labour badly loses all of those, please, for the love of God, don't mention a candidate in the by-election. I have to read them all out. Do you know, if that is the case, can he possibly survive, given that he's got the worst political poll ratings of any Prime Minister in modern history? We've got economy, what 0.1% growth in the final quarter of the year, for goodness sake. We've got, you know, chaos in the NHS, chaos in every other... I mean, come on. Do you think he survives?
Yeah, I think he survives, and I don't think there's a plausible alternative candidate.
Is that why? It's because there isn't a plausible alternative.
Yeah, but there's no alternative vision here. If you actually look at what the Prime Minister says, it's often really sensible.
I usually fall asleep halfway through. I usually fall asleep 3 seconds into his speeches. I have to tape them so I can watch them again.
Maybe you
can't
get to
make
5
it through.
seconds. Yeah, and what I'm saying is that there's a kind of... He's got a recalcitrant morality in it, but he's got to operationalise. So,
well, I don't even understand what any of those words mean. He doesn't believe in anything. The reason why he U-turns, the reason why no one knows what the Prime Minister is and what he thinks and what he wants to do, is because he doesn't know. He's a creation of whether it's Morgan McSweeney or who else.
Well, I just want to say on radio, Morgan McSweeney made a huge mistake with the appointment of Mandelson, and he resigned, and that was honourable. But Morgan
resigned honourably many days after it emerged. That wasn't that honourable.
Well, I actually think he's a decent man who understood. But
it's not honourable to resign, because if you resign, oh my God, I hadn't realised this guy was best friend. That information's been known for ages. He would have known perfectly well that Mandelson was still mates. We knew that information, and he pushed for his appointment. What is honourable about his resignation?
Well, he recognised he made a mistake, and he resigned, and I respect him for that. That's what I'm saying is, I don't think. I mean, I was at DC for the inauguration.
Yes, everyone was quite surprised of all the people who were invited.
Yeah, and people were walking up to me with photos of Mandelson in his bathrobe with Jeff blowing out the birthday candles, and I reported this back, but I don't think anybody on this side of the pond really understood QAnon, the scale of all of that.
How big this was going to explode. Yeah. I mean, they should have, given that this was a massive big election issue about Donald Trump promising to publish these files.
Yeah, we just weren't tuned into any of that, and now we've been floored by all of that.
But how does if it was the wrong decision to appoint Mandelson, and that information was known, the Prime Minister's blamed his aides, he's blamed the security services, the vetting. He'll blame anyone and everyone he can. The cabinet secretary apparently is going to be ousted as a result of it. He only started the job.
Gone.
Tim Allen, the
Tim
director.
Allen's gone.
Apparently, this still blows my mind. There was a director of strategic communications, but that, by all accounts, is because I'm hearing that because he's written some quite rude things to Mandelson, which are going to come out about the Prime Minister. But that's what I was.
But Tim Allen is your classic Blairite.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. It's like if the Prime Minister appoints all these people and he gets apparently bad advice, or he ignores the blatant evidence that was before his eyes, and he appoints someone, how is it right for them to go and not him? If he was doing the honourable thing, he would resign, wouldn't he?
Well, there's got to be a kind of, the Prime Minister has an obligation to serve this country. He says
he's got a mandate for 5 years.
Yeah, and what he has to understand, and my message to him, talking to you, Julia, is apologies are absolutely insufficient for the scale of this sin. There has to be repentance. There's got to be real change.
It doesn't appear that Labour women believe that there has been repentance. It does seem to be growing anger on the benches of Labour women about this.
I don't think just the women. To be honest, there is a revulsion to this, and there's got to be genuine reckoning with this. So, when it comes to the enforcement of the Supreme Court ruling on trans entry, on gender, we've got to enforce that. And what I see is an insufficient will to make the changes, and that's what's got to change.
Insufficient will. They completely disagree.
Well, this
is my thing. This all ties in together. If you admit that Supreme Court ruling admits that, men are men and women are women, they can't change sex, and women need single-sex spaces for a specific reason, not because there's a piece of paper saying that they're what they are, but because they actually are what they are, and men are what they are.
Yes.
If this all ties in with the Ratcliffe thing as well, they can't admit that anything that Jim Ratcliffe said in terms of immigration and the huge numbers and the impact on our culture, which I think was what he was implying a lot, and the impact on our workforce. They can't accept a single word of it, because you take one brick out of that woke progressive edifice, their world view about who are the oppressors, who are the oppressed, who are the bad people, who are the good people, who are the vulnerable, you take one brick out, the whole thing collapses. They're playing Jenga right now. You take that out.
But wouldn't that be great if the whole thing collapses?
But that's why they won't. That's why you then say that someone who says something like Jim Ratcliffe does is disgusting, that you're horrified, that you're sickened, and all of that nonsense.
Look, I still believe that our nation is a really genuinely great nation, that it's not animated by hate at all.
Absolutely.
That it's really a fantastically flexible and tolerant people who don't want violence and they don't want conflict. What they want...
Whose patience has been tested.
To the limit. And now it's the time to recognise that and to actually acknowledge the greatness of our nation, and particularly our working class, which is...
And you think women... You think Keir Starmer can do that?
Well, let's have a look.
If you're listening, you missed the shrug. You seriously think he's going to survive past May?
I do. I don't... Look, there's moments in politics, right? Last Monday was a moment for someone to move, right? It just was...
And they were frit.
What Machiavelli called the golden hour. There's a moment to strike.
Okay.
And I sat there and nothing happened. So that's my view of that.
I'm nervous that Philip Ingram come in listening and all of that, whichever aspect of this you want to come back in on.
Well, it's just, it's a privilege to sit beside a politician who talks so much common sense. Coming in.
But you'll get me into trouble.
Yeah, he will. We'll all get you into trouble.
Yeah, but it's interesting. The big thing that hit me was where you talked about bringing technical colleges back and turning universities into them. And we go back to the destruction of our education system and the desire then to give everyone degrees to send out into society
and humiliate them, and then they can
and put them into massive debt.
Yeah, emails. Yeah, okay. But vocation is.
Yeah, vocation is
absolutely. Yeah, but you can only do vocational work really if we've actually got any jobs for people to go into.
That's
but there we are.
We
could talk about this for hours.
Industrial strategy.
Right, leave these two to it, honestly.
All right.
Do as you're told. 12:25 is the time. Huge thanks to Philip Ingram, who's going to stay with you for the next half hour. Huge thanks to Maurice Lord at Glassman Labour peer and founder of Blue Labour. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Your calls up next, 0344 499 1000. Your reaction to what Ratcliffe has said, what Lord Glassman has said, and the pearl clutching that's going on from Labour today about it all. This is Talk. This is indeed Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:28 is at the time. For Big It'll be really interesting to get Maurice Glassman in. I mean, again, my thing's always like, how are you even still in the Labour Party?
Yeah, fantastic. And I was just saying he's going to have to put a big telephone directory down the back of his trousers when he goes into Parliament again, because the Labour whips will be after him for a lot of what he has said.
I don't think he cares. I really don't think he cares. And we've still got more and more people, by the way, basically having a go at Ratcliffe. I mean, there's some of the language about what he said. I mean, you'd think he'd said the N-word or something. Didn't even mention race. They are literally clutching at pearls on this one, bagging this out. We've got Wes Streeting talking about now. Apparently the Football Association is investigating. I mean, goodness me.
The memo's been circulated. They're all cutting and pasting their horror around everything else.
Jim Ratcliffe has said, I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe. It's important to raise the issue of controlled and well-managed immigration that supports economic growth. And my intention was to stress that governments must manage migration alongside investment in skills, industry and jobs so that long-term prosperity is shared by everyone. It's critical that we maintain an open debate on the challenges facing the UK. Couldn't agree with you more, mate. Let's go to your calls. Michael is in Birmingham. Good afternoon to you, Michael. What do you make of both what Jim Ratcliffe said, the apology and everyone clutching their pearls about it?
If he's offended the people he's offended, he's done the right thing.
Exactly.
I'm in Birmingham. Right, and I'm here to tell you now, I've stepped out of my gym.
Yeah.
If you came to my gym, you'd realise how right Robert Jenrick was. And if you're talking about colonisation, what happened with our police force? What happened with our police? Who were they bowing to?
The Maccabi Tel Aviv match.
Exactly.
Basically, let's ban Jews from the city centre.
But who were they bowing to?
Yeah.
Tell me that's not infiltration. All this thing about colonisation is with guns. Why? Do people say China isn't colonising Africa and the world economically?
Yeah.
You can do it in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's absolutely right.
And also, it doesn't mean that someone is like sitting there orchestrating it like a James Bond villain.
No, it doesn't. And just this thing, right? All this integration that we talk about. I work in workplaces in the public sector for my sins, and it's got this minority group meeting, that minority group meeting. It's got the Man United Muslim meeting. Why do Man United Muslims think they need it?
That's what I said. I heard it on the radio this morning. I'm like, why is your religion remotely relevant to your football team? I thought football teams were people's religion, but
going back to it, I'm glad the genie's out of the bottle. I know he's retracted a bit, and he has to.
No, not really. He's saying his choice of language has offended people.
In that case, I'm glad he hasn't, because I'm 100% behind him. Because I know one thing: most people in Birmingham that I know, down my local spoons, down the local drinkers, we weren't bothered about the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans coming here. But we were bothered about that police officer, because it gives us a signal as to who runs this city.
Yeah.
And if journalists and media, I'm not saying you, but if journalists and media types came to this city, and I would challenge anyone, they can come to my door and I'll walk them around.
Well, they do. They go to party conferences in Birmingham, and they see the reality, but they don't want to actually talk about it because it's uncomfortable.
Let them come to Yardley, which is Jess Phillips' constituency. Then tell me Jim Ratcliffe's wrong.
Yeah, well, indeed, by the way, Jess Phillips called out the men who were threatening her and intimidating her. And again, all from one particular immigrant group. Don't say it out loud, though, because I just want you to know, Michael, that you are a bigot and a racist for saying what you said, just so you know. Is that I believe that's how this works now.
If that makes me so, couldn't care less.
That's where the British people are now. You can't just keep throwing these words out when they don't have any meaning. Simon is in Basingstoke. Simon, what do you want to say?
Well, Julia, I agree with Jim Ratcliffe, but I think it's far worse than people realise. Yeah. We're importing probably closer to 1 million people a year, because the current government figures are based on surveys. They're not counting people in and out. Yeah. And we have 9.1 million people who are not in education, training or employment.
Yeah, of working age, yeah.
Yeah. Add to that the figures for actual unemployment, so people actually claiming benefit. The number of people as a percentage of our population who are not working is higher than it was in 1931.
Yeah.
That was the height of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Each migrant we import is costing us between £13.6 and £17,000 a year, which is far more than they contribute in taxes. Yeah. So the day that the overseas lenders stop funding our bond market, this ends right quick.
Yep.
And what we're going to see is a catastrophe. And one other thing, Julia, these figures are even worse in France and Germany.
Absolutely, and that's why their economies are also doing so badly as well. Simon, again, we're just talking about some facts. What I love is the amount of people going, no, it's not 12 million. You got his figures wrong. It's not 12 million since 2020. It's only 3 million. 1,643 more people arriving and staying every single day, but only, I'm sorry, I think they are completely misreading where the British public are on this. Thank you very much indeed for that call, Simon. I know Philippine is just desperate to get in.
Well, just a quick one. Sir Jim Radcliffe was using his language to portray sentiment and an understanding from there. He's not a politician, and therefore he wasn't using language from an exact
It was an
political
economic conversation.
It was a conversation where he was trying to give a feeling across rather than make a political statement. Our politicians are criticising him as if he was a politician.
But again, they're going for the word because it makes people feel uncomfortable. Colonisation's bad because white people did it. I mean, so did everyone of every empire. Get over
Keir
yourself.
Starmer's a liar. He can't defend that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that escalated. 12:30. Your little face. 12:34 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about what on earth is going on in Ukraine. We had talk about having a referendum, on having general elections while there's still a war on. We are approaching the anniversary, of course, of the invasion on the 24th of February by Russia. What is going on and what sort of deal can be done? It goes off the front pages a lot, Ukraine, but of course we've had another £500 million worth of defence aid being promised in the last 24 hours by just Britain alone. We'll find out what's going on with a former senior advisor to President Zelensky up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:36 is the time. Let's turn our attention overseas right now and let's talk about what is happening with Ukraine. President Zelensky's put out a number of comments in the last couple of days about whether or not there will be elections or referendums on the future of his country. What is going on? Let's talk to Igor Novikov, who's a former advisor to President Zelensky. Good afternoon to you.
Hello there. Hello.
Thanks for joining us. So, first of all, there was this statement. It was reported in various outlets, I think initially in the Financial Times, that there was going to be a referendum to be held extraordinarily on the day of the anniversary of the invasion by Russia on the 24th of February this month, and even an election on that day. The president has now rowed back on this, but was that ever a serious option, A, during wartime, and B, with so many people abroad still as fleeing from the war?
Well, no, I don't think the specific facts mentioned in the Financial Times were in fact real. I think somebody was testing public opinion there. But in terms of what's really going to happen, Ukraine is long overdue an election, so we will have we'll have elections eventually. But it's a question of security first, and that will not change because basically the security issue determines who gets to pick our new government and new president, whether it's Russia's Vladimir Putin or the Ukrainian people.
One of the things that Vladimir Putin's argued, and his apologists in the West have constantly said, well, this man's not elected, he's not democratic, he would lose the election. But of course, we didn't have, when we were fighting wars, the Second World War, we didn't have general elections either. This is completely the norm in countries when they're certainly facing invasion. But also the polling suggests that actually Zelensky, if he did stand an election, would win it.
I think he stands a healthy chance of winning it. Yes, at least I'm not seeing at the moment any like serious contenders for the president's post. And I wouldn't want to be the president of Ukraine, especially after the ceasefire. Trust me.
Well, indeed.
And we remember what happened in your general election after the Second World War.
Yeah, Winston Churchill was straight out. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? But this is it. It all have to be predicated on it being safe and secure enough to hold an election and not to be focused entirely on the war effort. Doesn't look like that is coming. We're constantly told there are more talks here, more talks there, and Donald Trump, bearing in mind, he said he was going to end the war within 24 hours after taking office in January last year. That didn't happen either, obviously. Is there any hope we are moving anywhere, given that, as far as we can tell, Putin has not budged 1 centimetre on the land that he will insist that he gets to have and the terms he gets to have, land he hasn't even conquered it with his own military forces before there can be anything close to a proper ceasefire?
Well, first and foremost, his wish list is actually growing. So he preys on weakness, and he senses that weakness from the West and certain politicians in Ukraine. So he actually kind of adds things to his wish list. Now, whether this war can be ended, I think it can, but only from the position of strength. Now, as far as President Trump's statement about ending this war in 24 hours, I mean, you have to read between the lines with what the politicians say, because Biden said he's with us for as long as it takes. Where's Biden?
Yeah, fair point. But this is the thing. I mean, the deal was always. I mean, the idea was that why on earth would Ukraine have to give up territory? Certainly not territory that had even been conquered. But if there was this possibility of Trump stopping selling weapons, stopping giving any support, then Zelensky could be forced back to the wall to agree to a ceasefire and give up some territory that had already been taken. But there would have to be a constitutional referendum, because he can't de facto or de jure actually give up territory to another country under the constitution. Would the Ukrainian people, after so many lives lost, so many people injured, so much damage to the country, after fighting so hard, I mean, the hearts of lions, would they be willing to say, well, OK, fine, we'll give up and we'll hand over the Donbass to Vladimir Putin and his invading forces?
Well, I, first and foremost, don't speak for the Ukrainian people, so I only have my own opinion there. I wouldn't at this point, but at the right time, people talk about this as war and peace. I don't see it that way. I think one great woman once said that if somebody wants to kill you, that leaves too little room for compromise. I think this is Ukraine's war for independence against Russia that takes different forms. I think the peace that we might get because of President Trump or somebody else will be hybrid peace. And, in certain ways, it'll be scarier than the war itself. So I think the war ends with the change of regime in Russia and with, propaganda hopefully switching off at some point. Otherwise, this war is only going to extend to Europe and beyond.
Well, again, that's the argument. I mean, we've certainly make it on this show all the time when people say, oh, it's a foreign war, it's not our problem. It's absolutely going to become our problem if we allow Russia to seize Ukraine. I mean, we also know we've got a Putin, his entire Russian economy is now a war economy. Switching that off puts his position in peril as well, doesn't it? And so that's, whether he then turns his war machine economy to another country. How much confidence do you have finally in Europe carrying on support? We've got that, £500 million extra defence spending from the help from Britain. We've had more support from other countries in Europe since the Americans under Trump have pulled back. But how confident are you that the Europeans are able and willing to step up to support Ukraine if and when Donald Trump goes, I'm done?
Julia, well, I don't think you have any choice. And let me explain it to you this way. Most of Ukraine didn't believe that, what we're living through right now was possible one day before the full-scale invasion began. Yeah. I think certain players, global players like Russia, China, and a couple of others, they see you as an enemy. I think with how the world is changing and how technology is changing, the hybrid nature of it is only going to escalate. I can give you one example. I mean, have you seen those interceptor drones that we used to take down the Russian Shahed drones? Well, imagine that being used against a civilian airline in any global
Well,
there's no way of stopping it.
Russia's been testing those at airports around Western Europe.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no protection from it as of now. So it's just like September 10th, 2001. So everything is in place, and it's a matter of just one malignant player just saying, well, let's see whether they swallow this. So I think it will come around eventually, but it's a question of what it takes, whether we can convince you or you're going to have to live through your own September 11th.
Igor Novikov, former advisor to President Zelensky, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Philip Ingram, listening to that, nodding through all of that. You're a former senior military intelligence officer. You've been very clear about where we should stand on Ukraine. What do you make of what he had to say?
I agree with everything that Igor said. And it's interesting, that £500 million that the UK has just agreed to give to Ukraine. The majority of that's going to be spent in companies in the UK. There's Ukrainian companies now opening up a factory for those interceptor drones that Igor talked about. They're being built in the UK and then shipped out to Ukraine. So that's being spent at home, getting jobs at home and everything else. Will the Americans pull out? Donald Trump's the art of the deal. Yeah. The EU have spent in 2025 $4.39 billion buying US weapons to give to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Donald Trump isn't going to stop selling that. So it all comes down to Russia collapsing, and the Ukrainians are attacking the Russian economy. Nothing's going to change on the front line. That's virtually stalemate. The Russian economy is in dire straits.
But this is the thing, Putin can't walk away from it because, well, if you've got a war, the entire economy is now a wartime economy. You walk away from that. So even if there was peace in Ukraine, he needs to carry on warfare to maintain his position.
Well, but
where does he go next? Latvia?
Well, and this is where the rest
NATO
of
allies,
the rest of Europe and other parts of the world are at risk, because Putin, even if the war stopped, will come back for another salami slice. But the Russian people are going to have an increasing say, because in this past week it's been acknowledged that cucumbers have gone up 425%. But that's an exemplar of what the cost of living, the impacts on the cost of living.
Well, we saw fertiliser and our energy costs going up. Fascinating. Again, there's a Munich defence conference going on starting tomorrow. We've got defence ministers meeting in Brussels today. Again, the last time everyone kind of met up, the G7, everything was all about Greenland for a bit, and Ukraine got a bit forgotten. A lot of focus has been on Iran. Of course, we had a lot of focus on Israel and what was going on in Gaza as well. Ukraine kind of gets a little bit forgotten along the way, but of course that is the war that is closest to us and the one that has the biggest effect on us.
Very much so.
12:45 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. So much more to come. Ian Collins coming up after 1 o'clock, of course. We're going to be talking about something much closer to home, actually. We're going to be talking about the holiday tax. Which could actually put an extra £100 on a family's holiday. Does that mean that people won't be going for their staycations, or what we just used to call vacations, in Britain anymore? We'll be talking to the Chief Executive of Haven about that up next. This is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:48 is the time. Going to be talking in a couple of moments about plans for a tax on people taking holidays in England should be scrapped. Who's saying this? Well, 200 hospitality and leisure bosses have said that it could add about 100 quid in total to a week break for a family, and that'll put people off having holidays at home. They might want to go and spend their money abroad, which would be terrible news for our economy. Well, we'll talk about that in a couple of moments. First up, though, let's get to more of your calls. So many calls on the board. 0344 499 1000 about Jim Ratcliffe, what he had to say about Britain being colonised by immigrants, and of course also then the pearl clutching from the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, you name it, everybody jumping in saying how horrified and disgusted they are by what he said. Well, you don't seem to be very disgusted and horrified. And what sort of language is that anyway? Let's talk to Jerry, who's on the line from Newcastle. Hello, Jerry.
Hi, Julia. It's great to talk to you. Look, I'm really disappointed with Jim Ratcliffe. He never needed to apologise. Keir Starmer prides himself on this free speech thing, but he's basically said, asking Ratcliffe to apologise. He's basically negated that whole free speech issue. He's basically said you don't have free speech because it doesn't agree with what I think you should be saying.
No, but he said, can I just say though, so Jim Ratcliffe said, I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe. He then goes,
what?
He doesn't say, he doesn't say he shouldn't have used that language. He says, I'm sorry if it offended people. I don't think that's so bad. But he's saying that he's not withdrawing his comments.
I don't care who he offends. I don't care. I'll say what I want to say, and I don't care who I offend.
Yep.
It's my free speech to offend them.
But also, if people are offended by facts. I mean, what do you make of the pearl clutching by the sort of, everybody Reeves, the Greens, everybody saying like these are disgusting and they're horrified by his words.
It's ridiculous. They're all so precious, aren't they? They're all so precious because it doesn't agree with their outlook. They're absolutely.
Why are they so threatened by it though?
Well, it's because it's the truth. They're threatened because it's the absolute truth. And Ratcliffe has spoken the truth, and nobody wants to say it out loud. And I'll say it. I'm sick of bloody Muslims in this country.
Okay.
Get the hell out. Get the hell out of Christian Britain.
What? Well, look, I'm an atheist. I'm not a Christian. I know we've got a Christian, Judeo-Christian culture, and that's the culture that I've been raised in and our country is based on. I don't understand. I don't have a problem with, quote, Muslims. I have a problem with Islamism. I have a problem with people who don't integrate from any background.
You walk down the West End in Newcastle, it's an absolute disgrace. It's full of... It's basically just like Jenrick said, spot the white person. The West End of Newcastle.
So is it their religion or is it the... I'm just going to ask you, is it the religion or the colour of their skin or both, or what's the issue? Is it...
It's both. It's both.
Why does it bother you if someone's got a different colour skin from you?
It bothers me because it's not Newcastle. It's not the way this city was... It's not Newcastle. It isn't Newcastle.
But if they were white and Muslim, that wouldn't be an issue? But I'm just trying to dig down.
Yes, it would. And that's what stops me voting for reform, because Leila Cunningham is a white Muslim. I do not want a Muslim in charge of this country, any part of this country.
Why?
Because I don't agree with Muslims. I don't agree with their religion. Their religion is fake. Every religion is fake.
Well, I'm an atheist. All religions are the same to me. I've got
religion.
But here's the thing. I think there's a massive issue with a religion which doesn't exercise tolerance, as in you can't marry who you want. You can't leave the religion without facing be apostasy, therefore being an apostate and therefore facing execution. I've got a massive issue with aspects of Islam when it is, well, let's face it, when it's basically the Old Testament version, when it's that version of it. But I don't have a problem with someone having a different religious view from me.
Everyone needs to read what Christopher Hitchens wrote about the Muslim faith. Read Christopher Hitchens.
No, I think there are particular issues with that particular faith and the history of that. I think there are issues there, but I don't I'm not going to criticise you for it. I think you've got every right to say it and to think it. But I don't share your view that, I don't want to live with Muslims and I don't want Muslims in this country. I think the vast majority of people of every faith and any are happy to just get on and live their own lives. I would like people to integrate more. I would like people, absolutely, I would require people who want to live here to, for a long time, to learn the language. I don't want any translation services and the like. I don't want people praying in the streets. I don't want people voting by religious views, whether it's Catholicism, Islam, or anything else. But I don't share your view that I want them to get out. If you're not here legally, I absolutely want you out. But that's a different issue, isn't it?
99%, I can guarantee most of these Mohammedans, as Father Calvin quite rightly calls them, they're illegal. They're illegal.
They're not. No, then that's simply not true. That's not true. They've arrived in this country under legal visas. That's just not true.
It simply is, Julia, and you're denying it.
No, I'm not denying it. I'm telling you the facts that they are here legally. Now, should that have been the case? We can discuss government policy in that, but that is not true.
No, it is. It is true.
Well, okay, we'll have to disagree on the facts then. But look, I want you to be able to say, I'm not going to condemn you for what you're saying. I can disagree with aspects of what you're saying, quite a lot of aspects of what you're saying. But I want people to be able to speak freely. We need to have this debate, and we can argue about the facts. That is absolutely crucial. Thank you. I appreciate you being honest. That's what I want. I'm not condemning anybody, even if I don't agree with people. Philip Ingram, a lot of people go, they raising, they're clutching their pearls. That view, I think, is not uncommon these days. But I think that's come about because people feel they've not been listened to on their genuine, I think, reasonable concerns.
100%. And a lot of people's views is on the illegal migration into this country with people coming across the border. But, I've got Muslim friends, some very close Muslim friends. The majority of those good Muslims are perfectly peace-abiding. They integrate in society.
There are hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world who are not,
Exactly. And his views do not reflect the majority of the Muslims that I
But we do have an Islamist. There is a very far too large minority of people in this country who have the Muslim faith, who have come to this country or born in this country, who have extreme views which are not compatible.
100%.
And those extreme views, lots of people would say, are actually are basically the strictest version of Islam. It's not a sort of a side. It's not a sidecar. It's the motorbike.
And a lot of them are being exacerbated by being in separate communities.
Yeah, that is part of the. And again, I think that's exactly what Jim Ratcliffe was talking about. Look, we've only got a couple more minutes, but we finally got our guest on the line. We're talking about this holiday tax, plans for a tax on people taking holidays in England. Many hospitality and leisure bosses have said, no, this is a terrible idea that the government is considering, allowing mayors and local council leaders to basically introduce a modest, they say, tourist tax or visitor levy to raise revenue. They say it'll actually put £100 on the cost of a holiday for a family. Let's talk to Simon Palethorpe. He's chief executive of Haven. They're a company operating a whole chain of holiday parks. And we finally got on your line. We've only got a couple of minutes, Simon, but why do you think this would be a bad thing?
I think it's a really bad idea because the people who are going to be hardest hit by it are families, British families coming on holiday to the coast with companies like ours, and it's going to add an awful lot to their holiday. Is it going to be an awful lot, though? We're looking at like a tax of like £1 or £2 per person per night. Actually, let me give you an example. Our cheapest breaks midweek off-peak start at £49. If you've got a family of 5, that's £10. £10 per night if it's a £2 levy.
That's a lot of extra money.
That takes your break from £49 to £89. And remember, within that £49, we're already paying, or the customer is paying £9 of VAT. So it's a really significant price.
And actually, so these local councils say we can raise this money, and I think that's already been brought in various cities. We'll raise this money, but then that could be spent on local amenities. But actually, the local area might actually benefit more from having more tourists coming into the local area, spending money in the cafes and the bars, etc.
100%. If you think about it, what are families going to do? They're going to either not take a break, they're going to take fewer breaks, they're going to take shorter breaks, or at the extreme, they go abroad because, after all, they pay a lower VAT rate on accommodation when you go abroad.
Yeah, but you've also got your flights. I mean, I often have a hotel levy when I go on holiday in Europe. There's a levy on the room per night. Rome and places like that have those levies. Hasn't stopped their tourism.
Yeah, but remember, they're already paying only a 10% VAT rate in continental Europe. So, we're talking about a highly taxed industry already being further taxed, or frankly, this will get passed on to the consumer, and the consumer will end up paying more. They'll end up being hurt. The local economies will end up being hurt. This net is a full set of economics that I think will be really bad for those locations that host British families for holidays in the UK.
Simon Pelthorpe, we only got you briefly, but we covered it all. Simon Pelthorpe from the Haven, the holiday park company. Fair points there, isn't it, Philip?
It is fair points. A holiday tax is something that is common across Europe, but this is where the VAT answers in there. What the government should do if they're going to bring that in is reduce VAT.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've got all of our sort of leisure activities, whether it's travel, whether it's hotels, whether it's holiday parks, whether it's going to the pub and restaurants.
Pubs and restaurants.
Huge amounts of tax on all of this stuff in this country. One person who definitely knows all about this. I can see you at a caravan in a holiday park, Mr. Ian Collins.
Well, when I'm there on the old Club 18 to 30 holidays.
Do you know what? I've seen those ones. You know those ones they've got about. There's those Butlins things. They've got holiday weekends like 80s weekends, no kids.
All of that.
I want to do an office outing.
Bit of Kershaw, bit of Le Mans.
Oh my God, that would be so much fun.
Yeah,
don't you
nothing
think?
wrong with that.
I mean, we'd probably all end up being arrested, but no.